How's it going, everybody? This is the Uncanny Omar, and welcome to the Thursday? What day is this, guys? Thursday?
You're not even the one in New Zealand, Omar. Come on.
I'm not in New Zealand. I'm just always living in the future. Thursday live stream. It's almost impromptu, but we've had this type of episode in the works for a while now. So here we go. I'm going to be talking to these wonderful folks and arguing with them because we're putting something special together. So first of all, let me introduce my guests. Let's go round table from the Norwegian Assassin. Tell me a little bit about yourselves and where people can find you. And then I'll talk a little bit more about this episode and what we're doing.
Right. My name is Lars Pearson. I am formerly of Wizard Magainze, currently of Mad Norwegian Press. I am thrilled to be here. I'm on a sort of sabbatical for a while, but I've missed all of you. And I want you to know that I do watch the videos that you do without me. But of course, I watch them with the sound turned off because I'm in it for the eye candy. And Omar, thank you for picking only the very most attractive of guests and hosts.
To put down at the bottom. Put at the bottom. Is that what you meant?
Especially Jess. You know, when you put that mask on, Jess, it's just like a mask of Aphrodite. You know, covering up, and then you.
This is how you choose to introduce yourself.
Your true beauty. You know,
he can't help himself. Nobody can help themselves, baby.
Yeah, but it's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Adorable Omni Dog. Please stop that.
You're the one that gave me that name.
I can't believe I said that. I can't believe those words came out of my mouth. All right,
I was the witness.
I know. Don't help there, Odfel. Who's next to you?
I am Crisis with a K, coming to you live from New Zealand, where it is, in fact, Friday. I write the long-standing blog and comic guide crushingcrisis.com. I'm so happy to exclusively appear in live streaming video here at Omar's channel, and I'm extra happy that I did not have to do my hair at 4 a.m. this morning in order to appear. So I am ready to argue. We've been talking about doing this for months now, and I'm not going to be nice today, except for the commenters, because we all know that I try to be their favorite.
He really does. It's like
mean Peter.
He gets a bonus for being the favorite. And who is to your right?
Hello, I'm Odfel. I'm a cosplayer and occasionally come on this channel to talk comics with you guys. I'm excited to be here and excited to argue. It's going to be fun.
Awesome. And adorable, who are you?
I am the adorable and arguing Omni Dog. I've got my argument game top level ready. I am on Omni Dogs Vault on YouTube, Omni Dogs _Vault on Instagram, and of course, Omni Dogs Unhinged Discord.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah, and I'm going to argue too with you mostly, but it sounds
probably.
like Odfel too.
Probably. We'll see. I've got my beer ready, so I'm ready.
Good.
Curtis, what about you, my friend? Who are you, and where do you come from? On the internet.
I am up here in Canada. I am, my name is Curtis, and I'm part of the Epic Marvel podcast, and I am really ready to do my best arguing, but I'm not a very good arguer, so I'll have to try and keep up with all the rest of you.
Oh, I want Curtis to snap. By end of the night, I want Curtis to let out all the F-bombs he's been holding in for so long. And I'll take it. I'll take the heat.
Question, Curtis, what is that gold star you're wearing? It's almost like the gold star of Adric from Nerdcore. Oh, I see. It's like the gold star of Adric from Doctor Who. It ended very badly for him. So
it's an old animation company. Do you know? Have you heard of it? They did a show called Slug Terra a number of years ago.
I've never heard of this. It's a Canadian cartoon. It was, okay. And I am the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition, and we have quite a treat for you all today. This is something a little bit different, but it has to do with collected editions. As some of you all know, about 2 months ago, I believe, maybe 3 months ago now, I got to announce the breaking news that Marvel was going to start Evergreen titles. And if you're not familiar with that term in the book world, it just means that these titles will be in print. And I released, I believe there's 12 of them, and that's what they're keeping in print. So in print, no matter what, like through all time, as long as they have the license for it, right? As long as I can't imagine them losing a license to their own characters, but who knows? And what we wanted to do was do our own list of Marvel Evergreen titles. However, my buddy Crisis had to put a spin and some drama in there, which I appreciated because it makes it more fun. So why don't you tell us what we're doing exactly, Peter?
Well, here is the idea. We would all like to add titles to the Evergreen list, but not all of us have taste as good as all of the rest of us. So we have each brought 2 to 3 nominations for the Evergreen titles, and each one of us is going to talk about why we feel it should be Evergreen, why the book should be available forever, why Marvel fans will want to buy it for generations, and then the rest of us are going to tell them why they are right or quite possibly wrong. So we will also take your feedback into account from the comment section, and we want to really beat these choices up and see if, in fact, any of them are worthy of joining the Marvel Evergreen list.
I don't want you to beat my choices up. I love my
yeah,
choices.
Jess is an easy pick.
Except for Jess's. Jess's
Why are we
all
even
gonna
putting
pass.
these on here? So one thing that he did, which hurt, was he limited us to 3 books that are already in print, which made this task near impossible for I know me. Like I kept going back. I'm like, oh my gosh, no, this book is more important. But I also have to look at it from the perspective of somebody that's trying to sell their book. Like, would that book actually be profitable out there in the market to get new readers in here? So it becomes a task of like, what could they sell? What is speaking to the audience now, and what you want out there in print. And we were given 3 choices. And then we have something a little bit extra at the end. So it's a lot of fun. But I took this way too seriously. Like, I think I redid my list 15 times. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe because I am the Uncanny Omar. So I can't put just X-Men on there, but I'm like, which X-Men?
We have a bonus violence round at the end.
But Omar, this is to try and entice newcomers. That's one of the criteria, right? They're entry points. They're entry points.
So basically, it's
That's what I thought of, yeah.
What if Marvel had approached us to come up with a list of trade paperbacks that would never ever go out of print, that would entice new readers, and also, keep people reading their comics, like the Marvel comics. And I would love to do the same thing with DC and keeping it the superheroes without going into Vertigo or Black Label, because I think that would be more fun. But let's start. So it's an easy thing we're doing, right? I'm going to share my screen here, and each one of us got to pick 3 trade paperbacks that are already out there, and then we get to decide what 10 actually make the list and why. So,
okay, hang on a sec. I already see Peter is in the chat.
Oh, Peter, I don't know. He is a beast.
Saying no Omnis for us, and that's kind of all I have because I don't have the trades of these Omnis. I upgraded to the Omnis.
That's why I'm doing this.
Peter's just a demagogue trying to influence the vote.
Yeah. We're good.
Look, John Oliver carpetbagged in and got into our New Zealand Bird of the Century vote. So I am now trying to affect the vote throughout the world here.
Yes, that surprises nobody.
Really quick, Philip Jackson's asking, when will Spider-Man Omnibus Volumes 1 through 3 be reprinted? 2 just got... I announced one of them to be reprinted, right? I think it was 2, maybe? Yep. All right. So our Marvel Evergreen list, here we go. We're going to go one by one per panelist. And I put them all in order, I believe. No, I did not. Why am I here? Why did it change the order of things? There we go. All right. First up is the ludicrous Lars. Let's get ready to rumble. All right. Lars picks 3 books.
What have you done to my name? Oh my God.
There you go.
You are Lar.
Sorry about that. Give me everybody chill. What happens when I create the thing in the middle of the night?
It's fine. I'm sorry. I was just overcome for a moment.
You haven't been here for a while. How is this my fault?
Yes, but you should know my name.
English is my second language, and you're not. That's not even an English.
You're going for a couple of
already.
And a good friend of yours forgets your name.
10 minutes in, and you're already playing that ESL card.
English is my second language. That's all I got, Jess. That hasn't gotten me anywhere. I don't get extra discounts. Nothing. All right, here we go. Sorry about that.
Okay, let's try this again.
We'll try this one more time. That was embarrassing.
We're professionals. Damn it.
All right, here we go. I do have a question for you, Lars, and this is an honest question.
Please.
How do you pronounce Yggdrasil?
Oh,
tree? How does one pronounce that?
that's an excellent question, and I would have to ask my cousins in Norway, I think, to get the proper.
God
pronunciation
bless.
of that.
I
Well,
thought
I
you would
know.
know.
Well, no. I mean, we are a bit Americanized. Okay, this requires some explanation. Let me quickly explain.
Okay,
So,
explain.
First up, I think I would go for Daredevil by Frank Miller. Now, here's the thing, which would be a little large, except if you leave out the issues that Miller drew but was not the artist, the writer, was not the writer, then I think you shrink it down to a more comfortable, like 500, 550 pages, which I think is workable. Because let's face it, the Frank Miller era, as we recognize it, doesn't really start properly until he's writer and artist, and in comes Elektra. So I think you actually could get that all in one go if you just did, the issues where he's writer and artist.
So you're pitching us kind of like a greatest hits of Miller, biggest story beats of Miller, most memorable.
I think you can actually get in all of the Daredevil run that he writes and draws. I think all of that fairly comfortably fits into one volume if you get rid of the ones where he's just the artist.
You're a big fan of Frank Miller. That's
well, I know. Well, weirdly, I'm not. I'm not like a devotee of Miller. I just recognize his influence. Okay, so there's that one. The Wolverine miniseries, I think, is really accessible. I think the art is stunning. The story is great. And it's a miniseries, so it's very affordable. And I like this one because it's a really good example of Wolverine being a man first and a savage second. I think in his early years, that's how he's portrayed. A man who's struggling with his animalistic impulses. Later phases of Wolverine, I think, have the problem that they lean toward toxic masculinity. I think it becomes, how many people did he stab in the head today? But this is a really good one. He does kill quite a few people, but he's struggling to be worthy.
Oh, it's like he was dropping ninjas left and right in this one.
Well, yeah, although you don't see a lot about him. Well, yeah, no, he is. But the whole story is geared around, are you worthy? Are you fighting the right cause? Are you worthy of this woman's love? Are you a person? He doesn't lose sight of his humanity in this one. I think he does lose sight of his humanity in later stories. And then X-Men God Loves, Man Kills. There might be a debate to be had about this one. I see in the channel some people are always like, no, I don't like that one. Again, it's accessible, it's affordable, and I think it's a really good example of kind of a default state for the X-Men, what people sort of expect X-Men to be. As good as other phases of the X-Men are, is that the best entry point? And I think this does make a good entry point. I think, it raises some important themes and it raises some important issues. And I think it is good for newbies.
I have a question to the panel. Are we going to do this like if more than two people or two people or more voted for the same book, does that automatically get put in the top 10 list? Or are we still going to argue for it? Because I'm all for if two or more people voted for the same book, putting it on the top 10. And mainly because I have one of Lars' books on my list. But that's why.
I highly doubt anybody has any of my books.
Oh,
Same.
I highly doubt that too.
We'll see.
But these are some really interesting choices that you have here. I think with the Miller and the Klaus Janson one, you would have to limit yourself to that first volume, right? Like 500 pages of all of Miller is almost too much for a new reader, I think. It's almost overwhelming, right? Just like I don't think any new readers would immediately go and buy $100 to $150 omnibus because they saw The Last Guardians of the Galaxy. I think they would go, hey, do you guys have anything with Guardians of the Galaxy at the comic book store? Right? I would think. And I'm just thinking.
I still think if you begin at the debut of Elektra issue.
Oh, no. Honestly, reprinting Visionaries #1 and just calling it Daredevil by Miller and Janson, I would be good with that. Leaving out the stuff that when he was just the artist, with I think kicking it off with the first appearance of Elektra would be good.
Yes.
158. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure.
That would be good.
Sure.
Okay. We'll come back to
the what if issue. You should include the what if issue in there as well.
Dang it, we're trying to simplify.
I love that one.
No,
everybody's tired of the multiverse.
By the way,
one of the best issues.
The only funny thing about including God Loves, Man Kills is that, how shall I put this? God Loves, Man Kills is actually quite critical of religion. And I'm surprised that Marvel's got away with publishing it this long. Now, when I say it's critical of religion, I think it's really critical of bigots cloaking themselves in the shroud of religion. So I'm not sure that it is critical of religion per se, but it could be perceived that way. So that may or may not be an issue for Marvel, but they've kept it around this long, so it's probably fine.
I
They
have
also-
a lot of thoughts about that one.
I was gonna say, didn't a couple years ago, didn't they add like 2 or 3 more chapters to it as well that they published? Like a
No, yeah, but they were
Yeah, they-
awful.
fair.
Absolutely
I would just
unnecessary.
Yeah, I would leave that out.
I don't know how anybody else feels. I'm sorry if anybody in the comments or panel likes that. Absolutely unnecessary. Added nothing to the story.
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree. I agree.
They were just trying to reprint it in 2-issue format, and then they gave us the gallery edition. Plus, that particular printing also is censored, which we'll go back to in a little bit to talk about these books.
Okay, so we're not doing the full debate now. This is the
No,
introductory-
save it.
Okay, all right.
Okay, save it. We'll come back to each of these. Peter's picks.
All right, mine are a little more
nuts.
eclectic.
Okay, explain what Mutant Genesis 2.0 is for people that don't know.
All right, so my first pick is from 1991 and 1992. It is X-Men Mutant Genesis 2.0. The 2.0 is important. So the Mutant Genesis collection always has historically collected X-Men 1991, issues 1 through 7, which is Jim Lee and Claremont for the first 3 issues. And then Jim Lee with, Omar, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Byrne doing script polishes for 4 through 7.
Yep.
And
With,
that's the introduction of Omega Red. It's very accessible. It is full-on X-Men 90s cartoon, which we're about to get back, which is the most exciting thing in these classic designs. The version 2.0, however, is all recolored with modern colors. And you have heard me time and again be like, screw modern colors, screw recoloring. This is dumb. What? But here's my thing. I think that Jim Lee's art works just as well now as it did then. It works in black and white, it works with flat colors, it works with modern colors. Why not give something that feels like a comic book that you could pick up today? These issues are as dense, as complex, and as exciting as any X-Men comic from the last 4 or 5 years, and they look just as good. I think, to me, this is the X-Men run to get to read. I just read it with my, at the time, 9-year-old, now 10-year-old. She loved every single second of it. I think it is eternal.
Really? She loved every single. Okay, we're gonna come back to that one. I've got thoughts on that one. Now that I'm so glad somebody had the brains to pick the next one, though. But go ahead. What is the next one?
I was originally just going to take the first volume of the Jason Aaron Thor and Esad Ribic Thor God of Thunder 2013 series, but I realized Marvel actually already went back to press with a trade paperback that has issues 1 through 11, which is the whole initial Gore story, and they released it in timing to the somewhat regretful 4th Thor movie that didn't tell that story very well. So it's actually perfect. I was like, Thor's got to be on this list, but everybody's going to want to say, put all of Walt Simonson on. That book is the doorstop. You can't put all of Walt Simonson on the Evergreen List. But this is 11 issues. It looks amazing. It is absolutely terrifying. It's got Thor as a god, truly. And it has the 3 Thors, right? The young Thor, the modern Thor, and then the future Father Thor. And I think this is Marvel's best series of all of the 2010s. So I say, why not get people started on it, addicted to it, and then send them to pick up the omnibuses?
And it's got that bitchin' Esad Ribic artwork that's got that heavy metal flair. Oh my God, it's so good.
Peter, I'm going to add that I did have that Thor on my list until forced at last minute to crib it down.
That's what happens, Lars, when we are limited to 3 books.
So you decide to just stay in the 1980s. I hear you.
That's how much I agree.
I also had that book in my top 3, and then I'm like, at the end, it got booted for something else. Now, my next question to Peter is, what the hell's wrong with you? What is up with that last pick?
This last pick is my love letter to Omni Dog. And it was also one of my favorite comics. Ryan North, of course, very famous for his dinosaur comics, among many other things.
I heard his FF, or no, his FF is solid. I read his first trade. It was good.
Yeah, oh yeah, and Erica Henderson. To me, Squirrel Girl is a book you can hand to any kid, and it is funny. It's aspirational to them. She's in college, so she's a little bit older, but she's still clearly a young character. It's packed with really, really kind of modern jokes and puns that are funny in a different way than Marvel comic books from 40 or 30 years or even 10 or 15 years prior. It's and it's not that Marvel house style of art. It's really different. If you look at the graphic novels in your local library that are getting checked out, as much as we all love the Marvel house style, which is very derived from Stuart Immonen, that is not what kids are checking out from the library. The stuff they are checking out from the library looks like Squirrel Girl. Now, there have been some recollections of Squirrel Girl, but I just think, but it is easy. It's 5 issues. It's hilarious. She's a computer science student who talks to squirrels. I can't see anybody not liking it. I think it should be in print forever.
Okay, I will
can
say
see somebody not liking it.
but to back your statement, whenever I would volunteer at the Scholastic book fairs, that book and Miss Marvel were always the ones that were being bought out. You know, and then after that, I think it was like Miles Morales. Of course, you can't compete with Dogman. God bless that book. But, you know, I think for like superhero books, those books were being bought by kids in the digest size. Somebody needs it. Thank you for the super chat, Adam. Somebody needs Earth X on their list. It is the grand unified Kirby theory of Marvel. The 2 sequels ain't as good. The prequel is okay. Those books, those Omnis have been out of print. The 2 of them have been out of print for a while. I'm surprised they haven't come back. I really enjoy those 2. I'm also a big fan of not just Kruger, but Jean-Paul Leon's artwork. It's great in that.
Whatever their merits, though, is Earth X really good for newcomers? I'm not sure it is.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things like would Kingdom Come be good for a newcomer?
Well, I think that's a little dicey as well, because you have to be familiar with how the characters are when they start acting, you know, differently in the future.
You would think so, but then what if you're coming from like the movie side of things, like or the TV shows, and you're familiar with Superman and Batman, and you've heard about this old Superman and Batman? I don't know. I'm
gonna stick up for Earth X, even though this is reverse. It's Bizarro Peter, Bizarro Crisis, because I'm sticking up for all. I already told you that I want to do a recolored book. I think Earth X and stuff like that, it's like Watchmen. People sometimes read Watchmen as their first comic book. Watchmen just explicitly is parroting the comic book tropes of the 70s, 80s, and those specific Charleston characters. But if you know what heroes are broadly from media, you get what it is parodying with those heroes. And I think with Earth X, we're at a point that Marvel's biggest heroes are iconic enough that you don't have to know Marvel continuity to understand it being torn down in a Kirby fashion. I think those books work great as evergreen books.
Look, I think Adam's got you all fighting over a damn book that's not even on our list.
It is ridiculous.
We will come back. We will come back to that thought because I am curious about that. Odfel's picks.
Okay, so
I agree with a couple of these.
So I wanted to have one easy book that I feel like I don't have to pitch much, and I feel like probably will make it onto an official Evergreen list, and that is Dark Phoenix. I feel like it's probably in the top 3 as far as an arc that people think of when they think of X-Men. It's just iconic. I don't really feel like I have to argue for it too much. It is just honestly one of the most classic stories that's been redone, animated a couple times, and in movies, regrettably twice. It's pervasive for X-Men. Astonishing X-Men. So I think this one is a fantastic entry point for new X-Men readers, because without it, events like the Messiah Complex, Necrosha, Dark Avengers, Utopia Nation X don't really make that much sense. I think if readers don't want to go all the way back and read vintage X-Men, this is a great starting point because it's so different from Morrison's that starting at Morrison's is not going to help you with those events. I think this establishes the new team dynamics that continue through all of those events, which are often ones that sell well. And I could see things like Messiah Complex also being an evergreen. So I think this is a really good starting point for modern X-Men readers who want to get in and recognize some of the characters and want the new dynamics that continue on through the books. At least through that one. I don't know. I think that's a good entry point.
No, keep going, because I don't think there's an argument there, because I think this is one that's already in the Evergreen list. If I'm not mistaken, can anybody remember?
I thought Dark Phoenix was.
Dark Phoenix is already was.
Oh, Dark Phoenix, yes.
You had a video on the Evergreen list?
Can't stand you like at all. Why are you even?
I rewatched it. I did.
Thank you. Thank you.
So did I.
All right, 2 people that watch my videos. Thank
Didn't even know there was one.
It's just me watching the videos 5,000 times a day, Omar.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. But okay. So tell me about your third choice here.
Yeah, so I was racking my brain because I really wanted to put something Captain Marvel on the list because I feel like she's kind of becoming the flagship kind of Wonder Woman character for the MCU that's going to be kind of the female face for the franchise for the next while. So I'm like, I want to put something Captain Marvel on the list because new readers are probably going to be engaging with all the Captain Marvel stuff that's probably going to come out of the Marvels and want a starting point. And I was debating between this and The Life of Captain Marvel, but I know The Life of Captain Marvel's a little controversial because of the retcon they did. So even though I feel like that one might be more approachable for new readers, this one is going to be kind of a more recognizable startup because, first of all, this is the first run where she goes by Captain Marvel, so you're not starting fans on Miss Marvel where they might be confused why that's Carol. This is going to have the name recognition of being a Captain Marvel book while also featuring prominently Monica Rambeau in the first arc as well, which I think helps it and helps tie it into things like the movies that people starting out with comics will recognize and want to engage with. Not to mention just the DeConnick run is iconic and really established what Carol would become as Captain Marvel versus Miss Marvel.
Okay, interesting. So we will come back to this, but I agree with one of the. I strongly agree with one of those. I strongly disagree with another one though. But that's okay. That's what this is about, right? Omni Dog's picks. Really quick, what the F is the Grand Unified Kirby Theory? Go and read Earth X, man. That's what it is. That was an easy one. All right. Omni Dog, tell me about your picks. This is interesting. This is our first Spider-Man chosen, by the way. And you went with Friendly Neighborhood.
First of all, I will say that I put absolutely zero thought into this compared to everybody else. I picked,
of course.
I had no idea that this was supposed to draw readers in. Although I think, excuse me, that Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man does a great job of making it. Tom Taylor does a great job of making Spider-Man a real neighborhood Spider-Man. He's in your neighborhood where you're living in New York City and buildings are crumbling and people are fighting in your neighborhood. And this is what it's really like to have Spider-Man in your neighborhood. But he is always a force for good, no matter what kind of trials and tribulations he goes through. It contains the fabulously written, not maudlin at all, but brilliantly touching Spider Bite story, which I think if anybody reads and doesn't like, you should be booted off the planet because it is touching and wonderful. And both volumes speak right to the heart of what it's like to be Spider-Man right in your neighborhood, dealing with the local mom and pop grocery store, bodega, whatever is right down the street, and having a very well-rounded character that Peter is in dealing with Aunt May's cancer treatments, where he digs deep inside himself and realizes that how important Aunt May is to him. And I think that this is a book. One of the things I like about all three of my picks is they have a lot of heart. And this book is full of Spider-Man's heart.
Okay.
And the next book,
Slots Run, huh?
Yeah, I picked this because this is the number 2. What I like to read when I like to read. See, I don't have alcohol in my life anymore, so I have to find my fun in comic books. That's what gives me comic books, gives me the endorphin release, or whatever the chemicals are released when you get to drink. I forget what the central nervous system.
Dopamine.
So, dopamine. Okay, thank you. I get the dopamine hit from comic books because I want to pick fun ones that keep me entertained, let me love the character, get me invested in the universe of that character, and see crucial character development as we go through it. If it's a character that's not written well, I'm not going to care about the character. And I care a lot about She-Hulk in this. Dan Slott puts her back in the courtroom. She's dealing with Earth crises and cosmic crises. She faces the living tribunal and realizes what's really important when she does face the living tribunal. And that is, of course, I wouldn't say it this way, but it's judge others as you would be judged. I would have rather said treat people as you want to be treated. Nevertheless, that's not how the Living Tribunal speaks. And she discovers a lot about herself in this run. And I think that it benefits a lot from its light dose of humor all the way through too.
So what you're saying is if you want to feel drunk, read Dan Slott's She-Hulk.
I hope that's a blurb on the back of the next reprinting.
Hey, kids. All right.
Next,
Next up on your list.
this is absolutely not for the new reader. This is for somebody that's been in comics a while. I absolutely would never recommend this to a new reader. This book is just pure out joy and fun for me. I was so pleased when it got an omnibus with all the stories in it. I think Christopher Hastings' run in particular and Kelly Thompson's West Coast Avengers runs are really well written and fun. Gwenpool is a character that started as a comic book cover during Secret Wars, I believe, and they took that cover and made it into I think the Unbelievable Gwenpool obviously pushes the boundaries of what it means to read a comic and be in a comic. She's not only is she breaking the fourth wall, she's climbing through panels. She climbs a couple pages ahead of herself and comes back, and she's dealing with Deadpool and evil Gwenpool. And it is just a boatload of fun. And all the writers throughout keep her lighthearted, smart, and strong. And the premise, for those of you out there who don't know Gwenpool, she's basically from Earth with a knowledge of Marvel Comics, and she finds herself plopped in Marvel Comics. She knows all the heroes and villains' weaknesses and strengths, and she has a blast defeating them, becoming friends with MODOK, and dealing with, I believe I said, Deadpool and Evil Gwenpool. The reason I chose this book for me is I think that this book could have been a big risk. The Christopher Hastings run ended up being like 26 issues, which I was really surprised and pleased at, because that meant at least it was selling. And she appeared in Howard the Duck first, and then West Coast Avengers. All throughout it, she kept, when I say heart, I mean, she knew herself and knew what she was capable of. She may be goofy, but she's a strong, powerful woman that knows what her strengths are and how to get in and out of situations, not necessarily using brute force, but using her mind and knowledge. And I just found this book to be a blast. It is absolutely not for new readers. It's for older readers that understand the tropes that she uses and mimics and pushes through and they make fun of. And I will brook no dissension on this choice. So shut up, Omar.
I didn't say anything. I thought it was a beautiful speech. And I think we all agree that we're going to pull it. That'll be the first book that goes.
You mother effer.
I'm ready.
Oh my
Dude,
God.
I will say,
you can't tell me that you like the unreadable Squirrel Girl better than Gwenpool.
I've got some damn thoughts about the unreadable Squirrel Girl
for you, and then you didn't put Squirrel Girl on your list for me.
It's not just my list. It's not just my list. It's everybody's list. I will say the biggest thing you should have sold this on is the artwork. It has that manga flair by Gurihiru. I mean, that is a Japanese artist that obviously captivates a lot of readers with their artwork. And I feel like their covers really sell a lot of comics sometimes because people are like, oh, that's obviously a manga-ish character.
True.
All right, we will come back to this.
Had I ever read any manga, I would have noticed that.
You read Berserk Volume 1, which I was really proud
Berserk
of
is totally a different tone, though.
Yeah, but he didn't even make it to the good stuff. He gave up. He gave up.
I read one book of Blade the Immortal somebody or whatever.
Also
that
gave
was.
that up.
But they,
That's
Spider or Superman Smashes the Clan is the same artist, right?
Goody Hito.
I
And that
believe.
that did really well with the younger crowd.
Yep,
It's also
absolutely.
an
All right,
instant classic.
Curtis. Look at the love for Spidey over here,
Nice.
brother.
I agree with this list completely.
I'm so
Mhm.
glad somebody had the brains to add Runaways because that was 4th on my list. So go ahead,
So-
Curtis.
My thinking behind these picks it was mostly what is accessible, but then what do I want to make sure is included in like a public library. I don't like for the masses, right? If these are the picks that are going to be going out to the people who don't go to comic shops, what do I want them to read? And Runaways is actually it's on my pick because I have been trying forever to try and get my sons to read any comics, and they just haven't been interested. But finally, I handed one of my sons, he's 12 years old, Runaways, just the other day, and he absolutely loved it. And he ate it up. He read through like the first 4 books, no problem. And then he's like, I want to watch the TV show now. And so like there we go. Runaways is just a great story of these kids who find out their parents are supervillains, and it's like that right there, that one sentence just kind of drags pulls you in. And Brian K. Vaughan's a great writer. I will say though, the one caveat that I would make is that they would need to edit a little bit in this because back in the early 2000s, Brian K. Vaughan still used a lot of derogatory terms for gay people and neurodiverse people, and those terms are well out of style now. And no school would put a book on the shelf with those words in here. So I had to tell my son as well, I was like, you're going to read these words, and I'm not going to say I'm on your show, but just know that I don't endorse the way they're using this language. So just make sure that you don't use it either.
How about you meet me halfway, Curtis, and we make a school version and then an uncut version.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if it's for collectors, don't edit it at all. But if we're going to be handing this to children, I think that there's a responsibility that needs that those
It
it's
is
not
weird
acceptable.
because those books also came in digest size and they were not edited at all.
No, they weren't. Yeah, and those are the ones that
digest size
ones.
weren't being handed to kids.
Okay, so the second pick here, Ultimate Spider-Man, one of my favorite comics of all time. I absolutely love it, and I know I'm going to get flack.
Really quick. I'm so sorry. Speaking as a regular patron of the local library system, you'll all be gratified to know that every book mentioned on the show is available from my lab. We just mentioned Berserk.
Gwenpool!
That's great.
Gwenpool. I was hoping they would write ... except Gwenpool. Go ahead, Curtis.
Okay. Ultimate Spider-Man is one of my favorite comics of all time. I loved it when it came out. I still love it. I still love it when I go back and reread it. And it's let's see here. I will get some flack for saying this, but I think it's a better Spider-Man origin story than Amazing Spider-Man 15. And
by far.
What?
Well, yeah. He got 7 issues to retell the story. It's gonna be better.
Yeah. And I think it's great. I think that if people want to know about Peter and learn about this character, then there we go. Now, I would probably choose the Ultimate Collection rather than this cover that you've chosen here because it has the first 12 issues. In fact, I would probably try and get a more epic size book that has the first 3 issues so we can get the Doc Ock story in there as well. So if we ever have an Ultimate Spider-Man Modern Era Epic Collection Volume 1 that has the first 3 story arcs, that will be my pick right there.
Okay.
And then the last pick here.
One.
Yeah, Superior Spider-Man. It's so we're talking about whether or not these are accessible or not. I think that everybody on the planet by now knows Spider-Man well enough that they can understand who Spider-Man is. So let's give us a book where Spider-Man isn't really in the book. What I love about Superior Spider-Man is that Dan Slott spent so much time changing who Spider-Man is. And then he brings us Superior Spider-Man, where he deconstructs Spider-Man and we find out what it actually means to be Spider-Man as Doc Ock goes through his journey. So if you want a good study on what it means to be Spider-Man, this is the book that I would recommend.
That is really interesting because not a lot of people would recommend that as a book. I agree with you because when I did my list of where to start reading Spider-Man, Superior Spider-Man makes that list because I think it's a great way to get into the psyche of Peter Parker, and it's hilariously done.
Yeah, it's really good.
Okay. Is that it, Curtis, or do you want to add anything else?
Nope. I think that's fine. That's it.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I want to address the comments. I'm not saying that like the censorship issue that I was mentioning is like if we are trying to get things in school, they have to be appropriate, and appropriate language is part of it. That means either creating brand new work and not putting the old stuff in, or slightly altering the old stuff so that it is more appropriate for a modern audience. I'm not against censorship. I work for a couple book publishers that publish books from 100 years ago with all sorts of racist stereotypes, and I'm like, we got to present it as it is, but it's for a specific audience, and it has to be read in a specific context. If you're just putting it on your school library and the no context is given, then that's a problem.
So what about, oh my God, I can't, sorry. This is going to open up another door. I don't know if I want to go down this road, but like books that kids have to read, like things like To Kill a Mockingbird, or, the words that are.
Here's the thing is, those books are read in context because you're doing it for your English class.
Well, then why can't
so
this
it's
be read in
okay.
content?
Well, so
but they
here's
are
the thing.
available. Go ahead.
Like so let me get my history nerd out. Like books that are from like the 40s and 50s, or things that struggle with, issues like that, they are in a historical context. Like he was saying, they're presented in a historical context. Things like The Runaways are more timeless, and that's where it can be harmful. Is even though this is a book that could be, from the 90s, the early 2000s, kids still look like that, kids still engage with that story, and if they're just checking out of the library, they're not aware that this story takes place in the early 2000s, they're probably just going to incur these words and be like, oh, these are like modern, things, where it's not being presented in a class or talked about. They're like, hey, you can check this out, but there's these things in it. So either just like a disclaimer page being like, this is a product of its time from the early 2000s, or censoring those for the availability of kids, I don't think is necessarily harmful in this scenario, because it is more of a timeless work, in my opinion.
And I will say this to add to that, and I don't want to get into an argument about that. I'd rather argue about comics. I think we don't give kids enough credit too. When I read Spider-Man, the Silver Age stuff with my daughters, I will never forget my oldest daughter, who was 9 or 10 at the time, looking at the camera and going, look, you're not going to see black people in schools because there weren't black people in schools. They weren't integrated during this time. And I felt like a complete dumbass because I was like, I didn't even think about that. But she thought about that and wanted to address our viewers. So she's like, these stories were written in 61. So times were different then. So I think,
no, that's fantastic. Glad to hear it.
Well,
I think we don't give kids enough credits to figure out, like, okay, this is totally a product of its time. Should not be saying that, or should not be doing these things, right?
Yeah, I worry that you have to either start censoring everything or perhaps nothing. That there's concern about this. I get that we're using appropriate language. I get that. But I'm not sure I buy the argument that, well, it's okay to expose them to things that are not appropriate in To Kill a Mockingbird, but here it has to go. It's these are either palatable things or they're not.
Well, let's add a little bit of modern context before Omar gets the hook out and makes us look at his choices. Books are getting challenges.
I am not afraid of you.
In schools and libraries now for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes for representation reasons, sometimes for language, sometimes because they're presenting issues that are unpalatable to people on all sides of the political spectrum. And if you're taking our hat off of just picking evergreen comics and thinking about trying to pick books that we want to promote to kids, if a book has something in it that's going to cause any challenge from any side, you have to be aware of why it's going to cause the challenge and what a librarian or a teacher is going to say to support that. So I think that if it's a book that otherwise has nothing challengeable, that has one word in it that might cause people to challenge it to take it off the shelves, if you want to expose people to that book, you have to think, is that word worth the challenges it is going to get from all sides to take the book off of the shelves for kids of a certain age? To speak about To Kill a Mockingbird, it has been challenged, again, from both sides, because some sides have challenged that some of the language is inappropriate, even though it isn't within the greater context of the story. Some sides have challenged it because it's too focused on social justice and learning about racial bias. So that's a book that many of us have read in school, that because of its content is being challenged. And you know what? Challenge is great. It's good that these things are challenged. It's good when kids are part of that conversation too, to understand why the books are being challenged. But if it's just about one word that one character says in one comic book panel, you have to kind of ask yourself, is it worth that whole spectrum? Is it core to the character? Is it part of the story? Or did Brian Vaughan just use a slur, right? I think to take a slur that we'll read in a lot of comics in the 80s and 90s, the G word for the Romani people, it's in like every third X-Men comic. And my daughter and I talked about the history of the word, what it means, why we don't say it now. And we just put, replacement words in for it. But that was because she had me to give her context. If a kid just picked up that book now, should we take that G word out of every comic book? I don't think we should, but we have to be aware that those books could be challenged. So I think it's just balance. And I think, knowing Curtis the little bit that I do, Curtis, I know that you are very keenly aware of what gets onto shelves and what doesn't and what can be challenged.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't aware that we had to pick an evergreen that had to be bulletproof in terms of.
No. I think Curtis just did.
Look at DC Comics, right? Watchmen has been evergreen since the 80s. And it's about to be in a digest size form.
If you want to uniquely pump Runaways, and I hope we're now talking about the very young, and that I understand. I will say I live in Iowa, and there is a book ban here, and it's atrocious. It's atrocious. That's all there is to it.
Nobody's censoring Gwenpool.
Omar, we want to hear yours, Omar.
All right, here we go. Jesus Christ, I can't believe I went this route.
I can't wait for this.
We're going to rip you to shreds.
Captain America Winter Soldier. I can't believe none of you put that on. That is, to me, the definitive Captain America. I love Mark Grunwald, but if I were to introduce somebody to Captain America, it would have to be Brubaker and Steve Epting's run. That run was phenomenal. It's cinematic. It's got everything I love about comics in it. Plus, it's got espionage. Oh, love it. I cannot believe I put Ultimate Spider-Man in there, but I got to give credit where credit is due. That book brought so many new readers into comics, not just Spider-Man, comic books. And I feel like it's one that definitely needs to be on an evergreen list. Like it's such a great introduction, like Curtis was saying, through the span of 7 issues, but it's a great introduction to the character, what he's about, and his supporting cast. And, honestly, people probably coming into comics now are coming in because of memes or coming in because of TikTok or movies. I don't think many kids are riding around with their parents going, oh my God, is that a comic book store? Let's go there.
Yeah.
I think it's because they're ready to shop for something they saw online. I feel like that's a great Spider-Man title. And God loves Van Kills. The epitome of an X-Men comic. Like everything I love about X-Men happens in that comic. I feel like it's timely enough. It's controversial enough. There's also derogatory racial slurs in here that we can talk about. I'll be happy to talk about that. And not about the racial slurs, but happy to talk about why in context of this book, I feel like they're important. And what Lars was saying is true. Yeah, they were getting a lot of hate back then from religious groups. Claiming that, how dare you write somebody that's a leader of a church as the villain. And, and to this day, we still see writers getting attacked for that, right? How dare you put the leader of the free world as a villain in your comic book? How dare you do that? Compare him to a Nazi or whatever's going on, right? Like we still see things like this happening. in the real world, where it's something is controversial, groups of people don't agree with it, or a certain group of people doesn't agree with it, and then like, yeah, there were pitchforks coming at Claremont for this.
Sure.
These were my three.
I totally think discussions like God Loves Man Kills are important, though, because it challenges the narrative, you know?
Yeah, and intriguingly, when the story was sort of adopted into X-Men 2, they left a lot of that out.
Well, yeah, it became more of a militant thing, right? Than the
greatest X-Men movie ever.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great movie. It's a great movie. But isn't it interesting how they left the religious angle to the side?
How does Peter type so fast and still talks to the?
I know. I'm so impressed. I try to keep up with chat, but
like his brain, and he's still arguing with us.
Everybody else, and he doesn't. His hands in the air right now, and he's typing.
It's impressive. Like, I try and check on chat every now and then, but I'm like, I'm impressed.
Totally.
Well, I want them all on my side when the argument starts. I'm trying to build up. I'm already trying to build up the anti-Omar sentiment so we can take.
Wait a minute. This isn't some poll. This ain't a damn poll. We're arguing for our books. So it takes us back to, we're definitely adding God. There are two people that voted for it, me and Lars, and that's all that matters, right?
Oh, you mean because you went last and you added them to your slide while they were talking?
I did not add, you bastard. How dare you? I had this picked out long. I had to remind you all to pick your freaking picks. I will pick up my slides.
I will say, I do think Ultimate Spider-Man, which Peter and Omar picked, is a great pick. Now, I'm also glad that the first Miles Morales is on the list. Somewhat similar origin stories, but very different characters. Good to give an entry point to both characters. I think that's lovely.
Okay, so who wants to go first? Who wants to? Because next up on the slide is. Sorry about that.
Whoa! Spoiler alert!
Let me. Everybody, chill. That's the beer talking. I'm gonna stop sharing, and let's talk. What's gonna be on our 10? Because we've got some choices now. We don't have exactly 15, because two of these choices,
well, 6 times 3 is 18, but
I think we just have honestly, I think we omit Gwynpool and we omit Captain Marvel by Kelly Sue DeConnick, and we're good.
Sue DeConnick's iconic.
Raise your hand if you agree. Right? On the same page, guys?
No one agrees with
absolutely.
That. One hand goes up because Peter's typing.
All right, hold on a second. Let me share the screen again. So thought we were on the same page, everybody. My bad. Okay. So
I was counting on. Well, I'm not going to reveal. I'll save it for later. I had another pick that I was like, no, I'm taking it off the list because somebody else is going to say it. I'm going to rely on their good taste to support me here.
I also took some deep cuts off as well, so I'm curious.
What is going to make it on our top 10? Let's go with Lars picks. What's out of Lars books?
Wait, how many do we need to eliminate? Like 3?
6. Because it was 18 picks with 2 duplicates.
And two duplicates. Okay.
So
wow, the math is strong with this one. And the beer.
I'm doing math. I'm in the comment section.
I can't do that.
I've got great hair. It's New Zealand. It's a complex place to live.
No, Kirby. Yeah, we want the books to sell, Josh. God's fire. Curtis got that drip. Yes, he does. All right. So out of Lars picks,
I am going to stick up for Lars.
Oh, how rare!
Wolverine.
Thank you.
I struggled to pick what iconic Wolverine story do you put on there? They already have Old Man Logan on the list, right? Yeah. So it's like, I'm like, do you do Madripoor? Do you do like the height of the, losing the adamantium, whatever? This is so elementally Logan. And I think Frank Miller's visual language in the book is so efficient that the panels, it almost looks like we were talking in the comment section about the cinematic style of the early 2000s that came from Hitch on Authority and then became Hitch on Ultimates. And then ultimately Cassidy also did on Planetary and brought to Astonishing X-Men, one of Odfel's picks. I actually think that you can look at this Wolverine book and Miller is already in this cinematic style. The panels just have so much movement and action in them. And I think this is a book that still reads, and it's complex. I mean, it's about Mariko is being abused. And I actually, this is one of the few comics I skipped in our read with my daughter because she was too young to fully get it. Now we've gone back and read it now that she's 10, but I think it's heavy and there's things to talk about. It's not just a flimsy comic. It's an amazing, timeless comic book.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And also, you know, I'm a little biased here in that I know that it works for newbies in that, you know, back in the dark days of like the 80s, we forget there weren't many graphic novels in stores at all. And, you know, little Lars went into Walden Books trying to find some comics. And all you could really get was like, the Dark Phoenix Saga and like Wolverine, this one, and like a few other ones. So this was deemed important enough to be collected when not a lot was getting collected. So I think it works quite well.
Well,
Okay.
I'd like to stick up for Daredevil here.
Okay. We can't give Lars the whole thing because I'm going to give him X-Men.
I think you
Okay.
absolutely
Oh,
can
well,
get
then
involved.
never mind.
Look, just agree that I'm
No,
not.
no. You need to stick up for Daredevil because that is a great run. But we are talking about 10, right? We are choosing 10. And we don't want to admit all three of yours, Jess, because that's what would end up happening. We don't want to do that to you.
Why am I on this channel? How did you get 90,000 subscribers? You are so, such a crappy
I
host.
bought them all.
I make
and
another
now-
100 email addresses every day, Jess.
I
Yeah,
believe
Peter-
it.
I think Peter's gonna play.
Well,
That
tragically,
totally makes
This is
sense
your
now.
side hustle. It's making more emails.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. Okay.
well,
go
we
ahead.
all have to, if we need to eliminate 6, we all have to give up 1.
All right.
Of the
Well, no. We're not going to make it that easy, Lars.
Ah.
We're not going to make it that easy. We're going to make it a lot more complicated. Stand up for yourself. Daredevil, does it belong on the list? Hell yes, it does. It's a great run. Phenomenal.
Well,
You
Should
start off-
we vote and majority, like vote on each one of these titles and majority determines whether or not it stays?
Peter, how did you have this played out in your head? A lot of
Yeah,
argument.
I thought we would just fight each other to the death. I mean, I'll come out against Daredevil.
Are you mad?
I'll come out against Daredevil. It's a great book, but it's part of a long run that has a lot of dull issues in the middle of it too. I don't think every one of them is a banger. And I think if we're going to put a Daredevil book on the Evergreen list, we could pick any first trade of a Daredevil book from 1998 to present, and it's going to be a bigger impact more immediately for readers than going back to Miller. Even though Miller is
dear.
foundational to all of them, I think you put I think it's just absurd to put a Daredevil book from before 1998 on the list for Evergreens before you have the first book of Bendis, Brubaker, Wade, Soul. I think all of those should be on the list.
Even
They're
though,
much
like,
easier to pick up.
Even though like Bendis and others are in the shadow of Frank Miller. I mean, even Bendis admits this. Even Bendis admits his run is basically Frank Miller's run.
Yeah, but it's like what you said about what people said about Ultimate Spider-Man. If it's newer and tighter,
Yeah.
then why are we going to try
I
to make
hear
somebody
you.
read Amazing Fantasy?
I mean, I do understand that. I don't think this is as, flimsy and inefficient as all that. But yeah, sure, I understand.
All right. I think
But you
I am with you on Wolverine. I think adding that to the list, and I am, it's not because I'm an X-Men guy, but I am an X-Men guy.
And I think God Loves Man Kills should always be in print. I think it will always be socially
Thank you, Odfel.
socially relevant and poignant.
Mhm.
And I think it's just one of those narratives that is unfortunately timeless because of social climates, but is a very important message and one of the deepest, most real moments X-Men kind of have when in regards to dealing with the social issues of being a mutant. And I think it's one of the best executed versions while also being short, concise, digestible, and isolated without needing to really know much X-Men before or after it to understand.
Wow. What? I mean, there is no argument
go.
with that. That was
That says it
beautifully
all.
put. I
Yeah.
think that says it all. And I
F
think
Daredevil.
and it's on my
Also, the
list,
chat pointed out Frank Miller, Born Again, is already on the Evergreen list. Do we need another older Daredevil book on the Evergreen list?
Well,
already?
yes, and that this is. I think this one's better myself. But okay.
That's fair.
Lord.
So you're throwing the cart list under the bus is your
What,
strategy.
Can we get a rundown of what actually is Evergreen for those of us that
Sure.
don't know?
I know Peter watches my show religiously, and I know Lars does, and I know
Yeah.
they write down everything I announce.
Oh,
What is it,
God.
guys?
well,
I just let you, Omar. I just have you playing in the background.
Infinity
while I'm
Gauntlet.
powering, So yeah.
Infinity Gauntlet,
Miss
Civil
Marvel,
War,
No Normal.
Oh my
Yep.
God! Civil
Immortal
War.
Hulk,
Okay.
which I
Miss
can't
Marvel
believe.
Volume 1.
That is a
Mhm.
bit odd. Yeah.
I think Dark Phoenix
Born
Saga.
Again,
Dark Phoenix Saga.
Saga,
That wouldn't
House of X
surprise
and
me.
Powers
That was
of
the one I
X.
put on.
The slightly weird one was Secret Wars.
I was gonna pick Secret Wars until I went back
But
and looked
Secret
at the
Wars
video,
is
and I was like,
it's a
"Oh, I'd
fun
already
book.
on there."
That was
Yeah.
me. I was gonna put Civil War, but I'm like, I guarantee this is on there already.
Oh yeah, no, so
It
was
is.
I.
It is.
I think
And
there's a-
honestly, as much as I hate that story, and I hate that story,
Mhm.
I think it's a great pick. It's a great
Yeah.
pick. You can't go wrong with Civil War. And it's so weird to say that, but it's beautifully drawn. The script is easy and it's a quick read. It's ridiculous. None of these characters act like that, but it's a good introduction to the Marvel universe.
All right,
So,
I'm now going to read you the existing list as I rewatch Omar's video
Okay.
in the background. The list is the Marvels. Marvels.
Marvel.
Okay,
Secret
Okay.
Wars.
Wait,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
the Alex Ross series. The Alex Ross series, yes.
Yeah. Secret Wars. Miles Morales, first volume. Miss Marvel, first volume. Black Panther by Ta-Nehisi Coates, first volume. Immortal Hulk, first volume. Infinity Gauntlet. Civil War. Dark Phoenix, the exact book that Odfel picked. So that one we don't have to worry about. Now we're
Yeah,
down
we
to
can
15.
Yeah, we can cut
House
that
of
out.
X, Powers of X, Old Man Logan, Daredevil Born Again. That's the list.
Immortal
Okay.
Hulk is odd. Only that's not what the Hulk is usually like.
This is
But
the,
it's-
the
but
Secret
would
Oh,
people
Wars.
but
pick it up
it's a
and
good
devour it?
Yeah.
mix. I
Yeah.
agree with that
Yeah.
one. That one's a
Yeah.
good mix of old and
Yeah.
new and mystery. All right, Lars, we're done.
It's
OG
We're done.
Secret Wars, by the way, for people asking.
The
Not
Secret
Peter's-
Wars. Is it the Secret Wars from with the Beyonder Secret Wars?
Yeah.
Poetic original
It's
Beyonder
Beyonder.
1984 Jim
It is
Shooter.
kind of a. It is
Oh
kind of a
my
good sort of-
god!
Well, that's the
But
thing.
I mean,
fantastic comic.
It's
That's
One
one
of
of
the worst books ever written.
Well,
What?
Well,
Come over here and say that.
I'm about in the middle. Of
Totally
Fly to
will.
New Zealand and pick a fight, Jess.
I am on my way.
Secret Wars is a good cornucopia of the main Marvel characters. I don't think it's that good. It's not bad, but it's not that good.
I love the chemistry between like Doctor Doom and the King, and I thought it was good. I thought it was fun to introduce you to the black costume. It's a
Yeah.
lot easier to understand than what Jonathan Hickman did in 2015.
It's
And it has like
okay,
every
you know?
famous Marvel character in it. Like
That's
there's
the
something to
payoff
be said
of
for picking up
Writers.
a book that has the characters you want to read.
They're often a very boring locale.
All right, we have chosen so far one book to add to the list, and that is Wolverine. So far,
Wolverine.
I
And God
think,
Loves Man Kills.
well, not yet.
Okay.
Because not
He
everybody
thinks
is
you're picking that off his list.
You're totally picking off mine. You're picking all three of mine, obviously, right?
Jeez.
Peter's list. I think as much as I love Mutant Genesis, that has to go.
What? What?
yeah, sorry.
Any X-Men story you put on the Evergreen list other than this is bullshit. Okay? It's this or the Highway.
Dude, do you know how complicated this story is? Magneto comes and attacks the X-Men because Moria McTaggart turned him into a baby and it messed with his head.
It was my first comic book, and look at me now.
I know, but they had that beautiful Jim Lee artwork in there that drove you to keep reading these. Like that nonsense that happened in Russia with Omega Red. Like I love it, right? I love it. I
What
get it.
X-Men book are you going to sell to the animated series fans that are about to arrive in the bookstore in droves after the X-Men 97 comes out like 3 months from now or whatever? What, you're going to sell them House of X and Powers of X?
I don't give a
instead of
crap about those people. I'm not gonna get God Loves Man Kills. But I do agree that Thor belongs on that list. So that was a hell of a choice. That was a good choice.
Yeah. And again,
There is.
I
I
agree.
don't think there's anybody on the panel that can counter argue why that doesn't belong. Maybe Curtis. He's
no,
been
and,
quiet.
and
Curtis.
that was the last book that I cut. So I agreed with it that much. Yeah.
Screw you,
Thanks for backing me
Omar.
up.
There are a lot of us. Okay,
We are
that's more than a
legion.
dozen. Does anybody want to argue against Thor?
Mm-mm.
Curtis? No, being quiet. Does anybody want to take up for Squirrel Girl?
Jess, my
I'll
longtime
support Squirrel Girl.
Yeah. me
Oh
too.
my gosh, why? Go ahead.
So I worked at a brick and
okay.
mortar, right? Like I am not the demographic for Squirrel Girl. That is perfectly fine. I've worked at brick and mortars twice now, and I was working at one when this first came out, and I was working at one like 2 years ago. And this book has always been popular with a young female demographic and a kid demographic. And I think that even though I was never quite the range for this, I think that we can't deny that that's a good demographic, and that some of the evergreens should be for a younger demographic and not all just for older readers. And older readers can also still enjoy this book. if it's like something they're looking for, whether it's a comedy book or like a cutesy book that's just a nice slice of life. But I think it is important that some of these evergreens are accessible to kids to get kids into comics who then can grow up and read things like Thor with Gore the God Butcher, you know?
Yeah.
And I think the art style is very accessible, very manga style, kind of like Gwenpool is for bringing in readers who read manga. And altogether, I think this is a really solid pick.
Oh my god, I can't believe it's gonna be between Squirrel Girl and freaking Gwenpool. This is awful.
No,
Did I step into another dimension where I have, and okay, that is
so
a
these are great picks. These are all great picks.
voters. Where's the
These
youth
are-
vote?
Okay.
Well, weirdly, you're right, Peter. How did Mutant Genesis become your most controversial pick? If gun to the head, you had to spike one. I guess I would only spike Mutant Genesis only because there's other X-Men stories. Whereas we don't really have a Thor. Well, we don't really. Do we have another Thor? Do we have another?
Yeah, there's no Thor on the list right now.
I guess I would spike it only for variety's sake, but it's a great pick.
So, and that is, and both Peter and Odfel have brought up something really important about an evergreen list, right? It's obviously it's not our favorites. I picked Ultimate Spider-Man on mine. It's what we think a good evergreen, always in print books list should be. Okay, so I'm gonna temporarily add Squirrel Girl unless anyone but me would speak up. I have a lot of problems with Squirrel Girl, mainly the artwork. I don't think it's that friendly. The jokes are not for everybody.
No,
I know. I just it's not for me.
Yeah.
I know that I'm not the target audience for this, like Odfel said, though. I know that a younger audience likes this stuff.
Yeah, a lot of humor is not universal. It makes me fall out of my chair with laughter, but I understand it's not for everyone.
You fall out of your chair reading Squirrel Girl?
Absolutely.
I
You are
I'm discovering new sides of you to love with every passing minute of this stream.
I want to see video of that.
I don't.
I bought all of this in the trades or the OHCs, and then I bought the omnibus, and it's that good.
I had no idea you like Squirrel. Wow.
Well, the Ryan North one. I mean, I like the Ryan North one. So.
Friendship with Omar canceled. Friendship with Lars initiated.
What? Ridiculous. All right. All right. Okay, I'm gonna add it.
Oh,
let's get to Odfel's picks. Immediately, we gotta hash out, we gotta take out Dark Phoenix because that's already on the list. So good job, Odfel.
I'm mad because I had a really solid fourth pick. Yeah.
What's your fourth pick?
Peter and I discussed it in the chat, but it was Demon Bear. New Mutants Demon Bear.
The New Mutants Demon Bear? I can add it on here, and you can give me an argument against it. Give me a second. Are you talking about just the Demon Bear saga, right? Not
just the Demon Bear saga. It's a really short, concise trade. I think it's great because the art style is really dark and really unique. I really like that era of New Mutants art. It's dark, it's scary, it's borderline a horror story, and I think it's a really fun way to get introduced to the team. And I don't know, I think Demon Bear is really unique and really cool, and would be a really good addition.
Demon Bear was my number 4 pick. I was trusting that that Odfel would scoop me on it, so I left it off my list. But I was trying to think what has a younger X-Men team, but that's like modern. It's not just like goofy, but it's like dramatic. Like it scratches that Immortal Hulk.
Yeah.
What of any X-Men story scratches an itch similar to Immortal Hulk? And Demon Bear is unsettling. It is a really scary X-Men comic.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and it's so short that it's great for new readers who just want a cheap trade, because I think it's 3-4 issues. It's not very long.
That's not long. If we must cut, there we go. Very nice.
Oh, you're fast. Okay.
If we simply must. If we must cut something, Odfel, I agree with everything you said about these picks. I think they're good picks. Do we cut Astonishing because there's the name Joss Whedon attached to it?
No. Absolutely not. This was one of the books that got me into X-Men. It was very easy to read. It was really fun. It made me care about the characters. We can't start we can't start retro censoring books because everybody out there has their flaws. This particular person's flaws are much worse than others.
Well,
But
that's just it. There's worse in degrees, you know.
And you
I
did,
don't see how you can just go back and cherry pick because of who the writer is and not have an easy, accessible way into X-Men, which I think is even more accessible than New Mutants. As much as I love New Mutants,
Mhm.
As I
be
said,
a
no,
book
I
that
agree with all the arguments in favor of its quality. Absolutely, positively. I'm saying if we must cut something, could that not be a reason to cut?
well, and then I
and
mean,
I'm saying no.
okay, and to chime in, I mean, we did say leaving in things like all the derogatory terms that are products of their time was okay. Why would we omit a book because of a troubled creator? I mean, how many books would be taken out of the library if that was
And
the
I
case?
think that's I just think it's a very internet discussion kind of take about like we have to stop consuming this thing because I don't know, like I look at all of the classical music and modern music and books and things, like we are going to find out that people are awful people. Like, newsflash, actually there's way more awful people that we learn about in hindsight that we knew about at the given time. And my position is it just doesn't change my feeling about art. It just
No,
doesn't.
I know, and this is the eternal art. Can you take the artist out of the art debate? I don't
Yeah.
begrudge anyone who buys this. Absolutely not. I'm just saying I don't know how we're going to get down to 10.
I think it is a very reasonable argument from a company perspective of like, would Marvel take the risk on this book because it might catch flack for being a Whedon book more than I think it shouldn't be made because it's a Whedon book. Like, I think it is a consideration of like, would they take that risk?
Yeah, well, if we're looking for something accessible to everybody, I mean, how many people would look at this and go, "It's Joss Whedon, I'm not touching it"?
But how many people are saying, Joss Whedon, I know that guy from Buffy? Like,
Yeah,
leave
it up to the reader.
Yes, I mean, you're right, but my point still stands.
You're worried about sales. Like,
I want to hear Curtis's opinion on this. Did you mute him already preemptively?
He's muted.
No wonder we haven't heard from Curtis. I just thought he was being Canadian and friendly.
I hope he's dropping F-bombs left and right now.
Are you sure he's not muted?
He's muted
himself.
Yeah.
He's muted.
He muted himself.
Microphone.
Curtis, you muted yourself. The little
it says I can't unmute your guest. The mic isn't connected. Your mic isn't connected.
Okay, can you hear me? Am I back?
There he is.
Right, something was up with my mic. I know. I've been trying to say something, and when I type up it, and everyone's like talking, and then it's like, how come everyone keeps on interrupting me?
We were actually just ignoring you. We could hear you just fine.
Yeah.
Hang on 1 second, Curtis. I have one more thing to say. No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Curtis.
Well, we already know Marvel's position on Joss Whedon because the Astonishing X-Men Modern Era Epic Collection Volume 1 is coming out next year. So they obviously don't have an issue with it. So,
and also he directed the Avengers.
Pardon me?
From the director of the Avengers.
Right. I work with a publisher that publishes all of these reprints of old comic strips from 100 years ago. You have to be able to separate the maker from the artwork and view both things in context. And so if we're able to do that, that's great. I think one of the issues with a modern creator is, are we supporting them financially through our purchases with contracts or royalties or whatever? I don't know if that's an argument, because sometimes it's like, I don't like that person. So like a lot of people like don't buy Harry Potter anymore because Rowling is a terrible person toward trans people. And if you buy your stuff, you're just, giving her money to further be anti whatever. So there's that argument as well. But ultimately, it's up to your own morals and your own scruples whether or not you go for this kind of thing. I think it needs to be an individual decision.
Well, and to be clear, again, I'm not arguing. I'm not arguing no one should buy it. Again, I'm arguing, does it deserve a spot on the evergreen list? It's just a question to ask, because in the comments someone made mention of the Cosby Show. So the Cosby Show, yes, but I wouldn't put the Cosby Show on a recommended list. for exactly that reason. So it's just a question to be asked. That's all. That's all.
Yeah, like
Cody
if we have
Summers,
to remove one of these, it's a valid concern and a valid topic because he does have a problematic track record.
Well, I mean, if we have to remove one from Odfel's list, obviously he's Captain Marvel by Kelly
agree.
Sue DeConnick, right? Because it's
I-
awful and nobody should have to leave it.
I personally,
I
and
am
I
now-
will be real. I will be real.
Go ahead,
Story
be real.
content wise, I do much prefer the later Captain Marvel stories with Kelly Thompson, but I feel like they're less accessible for readers who haven't been reading Captain Marvel. And I feel like even though, like, this one was pretty good, I'm not like super diehard for it, but I feel like it's one of her most entry level points for a new reader trying to connect with Captain Marvel. That might not, from the surface level, if they're a new reader, know Miss Marvel and be confused by that and be like, oh, this is Captain Marvel like the movie. Oh, Monica Rambeau's in the story. Oh, this is the first time she's Captain Marvel. It feels kind of like an origin for that title. And I think that that's what makes it a good entry level.
Okay, I mean, I see your point.
But if I had to cut one from this, that's probably also the one I would cut.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I remember, I mean, I love Kelly Sue DeConnick. Carol Danvers has been my favorite Marvel, non-X-Men, well, kind of X-Men Marvel character from 1991 to present. But when I read this first arc, I was like, really? Time travel with lady pilots? Like, it's just so not exciting. I think the first volume of Kelly Thompson, somebody I'm a lifelong fan of, and as long as she lives, may be forever. Her first arc with Radioactive Man and the sort of like weird alternate New York, that to me is way more fun to hand to a new reader than this. Although I do support your point that issues, I think it's 7 and 8 that have Monica Rambeau are amazing. I just think the first arc is a little sleepy.
It is a little sleepy, and that's why I debated back and forth because I was like, I love Kelly Thompson. I think it's one of the best characterizations of Carol they've done recently.
What's happening here?
I am so sorry. My wife came down here crying and it freaked me out because I thought something was wrong.
What just happened?
What is happening?
She's reading One Piece. I'm so sorry. I
thought something was wrong with one of your daughters.
I thought something was wrong with our family, and I'm like, what happened? And I freaked out. I think I pushed the wrong button. While I'm sorry. Odfel was
You're fine.
No, this is real emotion. Zoom in. Trust your news sense. Oh,
why couldn't you be holding up an X-Men comic? You just have to hold up a One Piece manga.
It's so good.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
I love you. I love you. And Oda got you. He got you. He does. He gets me too. But I ain't ever going on camera crying about One Piece. That's what you really got.
I love.
All right.
I've got two comments I want to make.
Go ahead.
One of them is that it's both relating to artwork. I think that while I absolutely love Bill Sienkiewicz on the Demon Bear, his work takes a little bit of work to read. It's not as clear. It's not as clearly defined as a just in terms of flow as it probably should be for new readers. I think it's beautiful and I love it. That's just my concern with that one. I am not a fan of, I think it's Soy on Captain Marvel. I'm not really a fan of his work. I don't really like the way he spaces his eyes so far apart in their heads. And it just kind of a little off-putting.
It is a little Uncanny Valley, I will say. I'm not a huge fan of his art either. I put this one on the list mostly because I was worried that re-entry, the first Kelly Thompson one, might be too dependent on previous stories for new readers.
A little inside baseball.
Jack Barry is 100% right, and also Lois Lane.
Omnibus, make it happen. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, and Lois Lane. And Sugar and Spike.
Oh my goodness. I cried like that during the Morbius movies.
Yes.
For different reasons, though, right, Brian? Different reasons. I agree. I think I love New Mutants. It is hard to fight for it to be long on the top 10 list, just because I think there are better stories out there that need to be in print. And New Mutants is kind of like the secondary team, right? Like it's like the X Babies, and there's nothing wrong with coming into comics with the X Babies, right? It's wonderful. It's great. It's great.
I would say my argument for it being on the top 10 is that it's unique because it's a very kind of self-encapsulated horror story, and there's not a whole lot of horror in Marvel.
Tomb of Dracula.
That
Evergreen.
is a good point. That is a good point. I think I would go with classic horror though, because that stuff to me is everlasting. I don't know about you guys, like the stuff from like Tomb of Dracula. Is that
Werewolf
what you
by
said, Kurt?
Night.
Yeah, that stuff I think is forever. You know, it doesn't matter when you read it. I think it's just one that's timeless. I don't know.
We are never going to get this down to 10.
Can I just
No.
make one more point about Astonishing X-Men? Is that
Yeah,
there when Curtis talked about royalties for the writer, there's other money that goes to a lot of other people that were involved in the creation. So
Absolutely.
that needs to be a consideration too. And that's why I agree that it needs to be left up to the reader whether or not they want to buy the book.
look, the way that I pitched this was we work for Marvel and we were giving a choice of doing our top 10. These books will forever be in print. I'm leaving
Did you
that
hear
kind
that,
of
everybody?
stuff
Omar said he
illegal.
works for Marvel.
No.
Did you get that?
Don't
Everybody
take that
got
out of
that?
context. God
What?
bless.
You
I don't
work
mean
for
that.
Marvel?
I pretend. I do every
I'm
day.
so sorry. I couldn't help myself.
Yeah, now you're gonna get a bunch of emails coming my way. But leave the legality to somebody else, right? These are books
Yeah.
that I think I recommend. If somebody in the legal department of these or of Marvel or Disney wants to go, wait a second, we can't give this book an evergreen, then that's up to them. But this is the way I figured it is our department. Thanks, Kurt. Peter, I appreciate that.
I'm
we
so
should keep
sorry.
going. We should keep going to the next list here.
Yes.
All
yes.
right. Next up is Omni Dog's picks. All
This
right.
is the easiest for you to cut. Just slash.
Oh my God.
All three of these are awful.
Oh
All right,
my
good.
God. You guys
All
don't
right.
know comic books at all.
I want to hear from Curtis because I feel like Curtis is the most open-minded out of all of us for some reason.
Okay,
I
so
think I'd rather-
the interesting thing about Jess's picks is that all three of these books I have not read.
You haven't read Spider-Man?
I have
Friendly
not read
neighborhood.
that particular story arc. No.
Wow.
So
Well,
I can't.
yeah.
I don't know if I could comment.
I sort of think we have the same issue here maybe with Peter's picks that, yeah, I think this is a great pick for She-Hulk. Gwenpool is great. We have other Spider-Man picks, potentially.
I
Nothing
would
is
cut
good.
Spider-Man, and I do want to hear, like, this is just me. I love that Spider-Man, but there's less Spider-Man in that than other books, right? That have Spider-Man on the title. She-Hulk, I'm just being biased. I did not like Dan Slott's run on She-Hulk.
Oh, I did enjoy it.
I was not a fan of that book, but I know that people really enjoyed it. I know that it made a lot of people crack up. God bless. I can't believe I'm saying this. Out of these three, I think Gwenpool would be the one that I would make evergreen if I had to choose out of these three, just because it is a fun book. I don't think you need to know a lot about the Marvel Universe. She's a goofy character that reintroduces you to all these other pre-existing characters. And it's got that manga flair.
And
I
not for
will
nothing,
totally
audiences
take that.
know who, like, I think non-comics audiences are savvy enough about Marvel from the movies now that if they saw that, they'd go, Gwen Stacy and Deadpool? Like, I think it just reads.
Right.
I think you know.
Mhm. And I also
But
think from an
having said that-
aesthetic.
Oh, go ahead, Odfel.
Oh no, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'll come back because I have something to say about Spider-Man. Talk about aesthetics.
I was going to say from an aesthetic standpoint too, I think it is a very attractive book that even if you know nothing about comics, I could see you being like, this looks silly, I'll pick it up. Sure, why not? Like, it's got that feel of like being detached enough. And like you were saying, like things like Captain America's shield is in that cover, but like even if you haven't read Captain America, you've probably at least seen trailers for the movies and go, haha, I could get that. Like I feel like a lot of her thing is reliant on pop culture, and because of that, it's extremely accessible.
And that cover is so eye-catchy. Like, seriously, on that cover alone, I think like my daughters would buy it. And
Yeah.
and I'm trying to put myself in the mentality of a 13-year-old girl, which I think like that's the way Jess thinks, and that's why he put it on this list, which is great.
Fair.
It's a great attitude to have.
I think we're putting Gwenpool on the list.
God bless. I can't.
Well, if we could all
Okay,
take
wait, wait,
our Olivia
man.
Rodrigo records for just a second to try to bring in some other viewpoints other than
Go ahead.
that view. Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, here's my pitch. We all know I don't like the Ultimate Universe, but this Bizarro Crisis today, I'm not going to lean on that. Do we need a Spider-Man origin book on the list? Everybody knows Spider-Man's origin. It's one of those things like Batman's origin. Parents died, gun, pearls, bat in the study. Who cares? We don't need 10 of that. We're looking for other books. This book is Spider-Man having adventures. It's him being Spider-Man. It's him being funny. If you can't sell a book of Spider-Man being funny on the Evergreen List and just doing stuff, all these kids that are watching that the new animated 3D animated Spider-Man cartoon with all the music from Patrick Stump from Fall Out Boy, so I love it. I think it's great.
What the hell is happening?
What are you going to sell to kids? Why are we so against Spider-Man? Should not just work at the like angsty teenage level. It should just be this book about a funny guy who's nice to people, and I think that's what Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is.
I'm going to politely push back against we don't need the origin story. I mean, first of all, I think it is a mistake to automatically assume that every new reader automatically may want to experience it in print, even if they know it from the movies, and they may not know it from the movies. Maybe they started with the new guy where they didn't do the origin story. I think there is still value in that. And secondly, in the comics, they keep swinging back to the origin story so often. They do, and with good reason, to remind people, hey, this is where they started. So I think there is value in it.
I think there's value in it, but I don't necessarily think that keeps this book out of the list, because it shows him in the setting that he's always called himself your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and it shows what the consequences and actions are, and of his living in your neighborhood. And as Peter said, he's always been famous for quips. He's way quippy in this, and it's is extremely funny and fun. I think somebody that just says, I want to read a Spider-Man book, you don't have to necessarily have the origin be evergreen. You can just pick up this Spider-Man book and read it and have fun.
No, I don't think you have to, but Ultimate Spider-Man is a perfectly valid pick. And I would probably pick that over this one purely because it does have the origin story. It's accessible. And as has just been pointed out in the chat, the MCU didn't do an origin story. So I think it's a mistake to assume that everyone's seen the origin story at length. And yeah, it's
also, I pitched to collect the first 3 story arcs to get a big fat epic size trade. So it's not just the origin story. It's a very minimal part of it.
Seriously. No one's going to take it seriously if you keep pitching Evergreen.
Well, just keep Spider-Man and Gwenpool and leave She-Hulk off. That sounds fine.
Wait, no, I don't agree with Spider-Man. Not at all. No, I actually think that Lars was on the right track. I think it's a great book. And I think, though, it doesn't feature enough Spider-Man for me to be invested in this book, though. If you don't remember, like the first 6 issues have more to do with his neighborhood. Hence the title, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. I know, but why would I want to read about a bunch of people living in an apartment complex when I bought a book called Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man?
Let me just ask this.
Craven's Last Hunt also not good because there's no Spider-Man in it.
Let me ask.
Well, see,
Curtis, you're on my side.
How many books have we picked so far?
We have 5 so far. 2 are a maybe. We've got Wolverine, Thor, Astonishing X-Men, Gwenpool, and Squirrel Girl. God bless America. How did that happen?
It's better than all.
Yeah, Curtis, I thought about Craven's Last Hunt quite seriously, but I did worry that, again, as an entry point to the world of Spider, although it's brilliant, it's absolutely brilliant. As an entry point into the world of Spider-Man, it's very off base, and the villain blows his brains out, and it's like, well, it is great, but maybe not an evergreen pick.
I will come to the defense of this She-Hulk book. I do really like it. I do think it's one of her stronger runs. But I feel like if they picked a She-Hulk run, this one is kind of like mid-tier on the popularity scale of just like how many people engage with it, even though I think it's good. I could see it being evergreen, but I could also see them picking John Byrne to be an evergreen for She-Hulk.
See, I would go the John Byrne route because it introduces you to everything that people know She-Hulk, breaking the fourth wall, being silly, and being a lawyer.
Yeah, because like I love this one. I think it establishes her personality really well. But I could see Marvel making the decision to do something like John Byrne.
And I mean, if we're gonna argue for the Guri Hero artwork, I mean, this one also has that anime flair with Juan Bobillo's artwork. That's a complete turnoff for a lot of people. Like a lot of people do not like his art. I find it. I actually like his artwork.
I also think that She-Hulk necessarily relies on a lot of Marvel Universe in-jokes in her 2000s series. And I want to be clear, we keep talking like Evergreen either has to be all for kids or has to be all for people who've never read Marvel books before. Evergreen books are allowed to be confusing. Immortal Hulk is on the official Marvel list. So is Powers of X. Like House of X, Powers of X is non-stop continuity deep cuts, but it's an exciting place to start. So the question is this She-Hulk book an exciting enough place to start? Personally, I don't think it is.
Hey, let's not get crazy, Cody Summers. Would rather make Daniel Way Wolverine Evergreen before
I love Daniel Way Wolverine. Let's go.
Oh my gosh, Peter, you're full of opinions today. But let's move on.
I didn't come here to make friends.
What?
We can have another discussion.
Yet
on
we
that.
did anyway.
So what made it off of this? Just Gwenpool?
Gwenpool so far, yes. Now we're gonna come back. We're gonna come back because we only have 5 so far. Curtis's pick. Completely agree with Runaways. I think that needs to be on the list. It's a younger audience. I, unlike Curtis, don't think anything needs to be censored. I think putting a label on it would be okay. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to speak for Curtis. You were talking about putting it in a school library, and I see what you're saying. I'm just
making it for the mass market. Then whatever. No, you don't need to change anything.
I think putting a this is a product of its time label on it and leaving it as it is.
Yeah, Disney's great at that. They do it with all their cartoons. Like Disney
I was
has a way to handle this.
That's how I would handle it, is just put something in the front that's like, this is blah blah blah. Because like once kids are aware of it, I feel like it's probably fine. But if they're not, that's where it could be confusing.
It's just a really
That's
good
it. We don't need to dwell. We don't need to dwell on that. Just the book on its own merit. Is fantastic.
Absolutely.
I would agree.
And I think I think keeping it evergreen for every reason that you stated makes sense. Does anybody disagree on that? Like, why would you keep Runaways out? I mean, personal taste aside, right? I don't like Ultimate Spider-Man, but I completely understand why it needs to be on this list. Lars, thoughts on Runaways?
Oh, keep Runaways. Absolutely.
Absolutely keep Runaways. I think it's a really, really solid choice.
Yep.
Okay.
Same. Yeah, I agree.
I am 100% behind Ultimate Spider-Man because I have it on my list. I think it's the choice for Spider-Man. I love Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. I love Roger Stern, David Michelinie, and Todd McFarlane. But I think this is the easiest way to get into Spider-Man, and it showed with the way that people rebought that omnibus twice. Like, it was restocked twice. How much people really love this run and what it means to them and how they got them in the comics. So that's why I think I'm with Curtis on this one. And it's also on my list. That's why. Anybody against this one? Peter, you got
yes, but I'm going to lose.
No.
What kind of attitude is that?
What do you got?
I just don't care. It's like I've never thought. I take away that I think the Ultimate Universe is garbage, and you can quote me on that. I don't think it's funny. I think Bendis is a bad writer. I think Bagley is a bad artist, and I don't like Spider-Man's origin story. Take that.
Those are 3 strikes. Wow. I agree with some of that.
Oh wow, my old friend. What is happening?
Everything is on fire.
Let's put some books on that somebody might like in 2023.
Oh my god. Everybody loves this, but you.
I know. That's why I said I'm going to lose. This is just one of those ones that I know. I mean, I can say this because we are all friends. Like, you all know that this book just has nothing for me, but I'm just one person.
No. I'm with you. I don't like this book either, but I understand.
Have you shared Ultimate Spider-Man with your children? With your daughter?
What's that?
Have you shared Ultimate Spider-Man?
No, I gave her the Maximum Carnage Epic Collection, and she loves it.
I have not read Ultimate Spider-Man. I don't read much Spider-Man, so I don't I can't really say one way or another. I don't tend to be a fan of the Ultimates universe, though, so.
I mean, the whole point of this run was to be an entry point. And, that's like, if we were doing these characters today, which today being 20 years ago, how would we do them? And yeah, I think it works very well in that regard.
Well, even now it's a little outdated. I'm sure a lot of kids reading it now are rolling their eyes like, look at this old technology these fools are using.
Well, certainly, but
now
describe every comic from
I actually enjoy Bagley's art. I love his artwork.
Yeah.
I'm a big Bagley fan. So we can discuss that another day, Peter. Wow. The only one on this list I do not agree with is Superior Spider-Man.
Yes, that's the one that although I think it's a work of quality, I absolutely do. Fundamentally, it's a Dr. Octopus book. And I understand that he's learning to become Spider-Man. But if we're, again, evergreen and trying to draw people in and so on, I don't know that I would go, here's this Dr. Octopus guy, and he's learning how to be this hero who is largely not around and in a hospital bed. But it is good, but I wouldn't give it to a newcomer.
Peter belongs here because people with bad taste and artists also deserve a He doesn't like Arthur Adams, but that's a story for another day. Oh my gosh.
Hey, I'm here as Bizarro Crisis. I might say something nice about Art Adams today if somebody would put him on the list.
I love Arthur Adams. So I mean, I just don't. I think there are better stories that belong on an evergreen list. Apparently, Gwenpool and Squirrel Girl. Then
once again, Squirrel Girl is better than every book on this list. But let's come back to
oh my god, you're so wrong. All right,
Superior. Okay, so Immortal Hulk is on the official it's already on the evergreen list.
Yes.
Now, yes, Hulk has always been a monster, and it's like so there's roots in Hulk, but it's still a very different Hulk book. That's not the Hulk book. It's relying on people to understand the core concept of Hulk and then take a step to the side. To me, Superior Spider-Man is about, it really exposes who Spider-Man is, because there's somebody who's like, it is easy. I'm just going to swing around and snark. And then he discovers that you have to have so much heart and you have to give up so much of yourself in order to do it, that it's actually not easy, and it's incredibly heartbreaking to be Spider-Man. I think that makes it possibly the best run of Spider-Man out of all of Spider-Man.
No, it is pretty great.
I will also argue in favor.
I find it odd that if anybody, they hadn't really read Spider-Man comics at all, that you would go, oh, here's a Spider-Man comic for you. Miles Morales and Peter Parker aren't in it, or not in the main. It's this, this Otto Octavius guy. That's strange.
Spider-Verse, baby.
I was also about to say, I don't read Spider-Man. I've never really been a fan of Peter Parker or Miles Morales. I have read this book because the hook was so good. So not to immediately contradict, but I was going to say, as someone who doesn't read Spider-Man, the hook for this is so intriguing that even though I don't tend to read Spider-Man, it's enough in the zeitgeist that I'm like, oh, that's interesting. His villain becomes him. I want to see how that plays out, that I did end up picking this book while it was coming out.
It did genuinely make me crack up, kind of like Lars falling off his seat with Squirrel Girl. This book made me crack up that much, especially when Doc,
especially the bit where Peter Parker is trapped and drooling in the hospital bed. Hilarious.
Oh my. Okay, get it. No. When Peter is like his little, his conscience, kind of like Jiminy Cricket, right? And he can hear Peter's thoughts. And then Doc Ock has all of Peter's memories, and vice versa. Peter also shares Doc Ock's memories. Like his wedding night with Aunt May. That part, I lost it.
That was possibly the funniest and most terrifying moment in Marvel Comics ever.
I don't think I've laughed out loud at a comic but that was amazing. I loved it. So I may come back to that one just for that scene. Okay. All right. I've added Ultimate Spider-Man. What do you guys think of Captain America? And then we'll talk about God Loves Man Kills.
100% Winter Soldier. Absolutely.
Yes, finally.
Yeah, I would agree with that too.
Same.
It's Odfel, Lars, thoughts on Captain America?
Sure, it's worthy.
Worthy.
I'm a little in the middle. Yes, it's a great pick. Mm-hmm. If we have to cut it or cut something, I don't know, but it's a great pick.
I was going to say, I personally also do not read Captain America, but I know Brubaker is a pretty definitive writer for Captain America that everyone pretty much in unison tends to like. And Winter Soldier is one of the most iconic stories, so I think it makes sense.
I mean, this was the template to the movie too.
Yeah.
So I think people coming in from the movie can be like, "Oh, this is like the movie." It's well drawn. I think it's got everything that I really enjoyed about comics in here.
I think
Ultimate
the
Spider-Man,
only potential downside is that it's not a whole story. Like it's the
Mhm.
beginning of a long, long arc of Winter Soldier. But Marvel has put tons of volume 1s on the Evergreen List, and I just think it's satisfying because it gives you this like gut punch right away. It has everything about who Cap is. It's everything about who Bucky was. It's fundamental to the character, and it's a twist. So like our argument about Superior Spider-Man is it's such a great twist, but is it fundamental to the character? Here's a book that has a great twist and is 100% a platform about why this character is who he is. So I think it might be the best pick of all the picks. It might be the best. That might be my number 1 of all 18, honestly.
Wow, really? Me? Thank you. That's all I needed. I'm done for tonight, then. I can clock out now. Thank you guys for watching. We're not even done with the top 10. Okay. So now go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Odfel. No.
I was going to say, to piggyback off of that, I think, like, even though we are talking about comics, it's not an ignorable factor to think about how movies do play into people wanting to get into comics. And this one shares the name with one of the most loved MCU films. I do think it's reasonable to assume that, like, people who see that film will probably want to then find the comic. And this is one of the stronger choices because it has that extra variety of being, like, exactly the same name. People are like, I liked Winter Soldier, let me pick up Winter Soldier. That is inignorable. Like it's you can't just kind of not think about the MCU when thinking about how books like this are going to hit an audience that might not be into comics yet.
Yeah, and I will tell you the hardest thing about putting this list together is not knowing what everybody else chose. We were given the task of choosing 3. Like, if I had known someone else was going to choose Ultimate Spider-Man, I definitely would have gone with something else, or Runaways, or because there's so many books that I wanted to add to this list. But limiting myself to 3 because Peter is a bastard was a near impossible task. And
this was designed to make us try to kill each other. That was I wanted the most fighting of any show that I've been on with this cast of people.
Hamza, I thought about you. But I picked Winter Soldier because I know how much you love Jack Monroe. Sorry, man. You and 3 other people are the only ones that did not like it.
Justice for Jack Monroe.
We did swap out my Dark Phoenix. Like, you have 2 that match other people. You could give us your 4th pick.
No. That was fair because that was already on the Evergreen List. This makes it a little more challenging. Okay. So my last pick is God Loves Man Kills. So the only one I haven't added, and I think it's, to me, the epitome of what X-Men is. I agree with Lars in every way. I think an uncensored version is completely okay. I read it as a kid. I didn't have issues. As a matter of fact, it opened my eyes to how powerful words could be.
But we can dump the framing sequence.
Yes, I would not add the new stuff. The new stuff adds nothing to the story. It's probably one of the most powerful comic stories I've ever read. Beautifully drawn. I know it was supposed to be Neil Adams at first, but I think Brent Anderson does an amazing job.
As good as Neil Adams is, Anderson winds up being the better pick for this story.
Well, all right, just because you're a bunch of fanboys, let me just give a
counter argument
that I don't entirely believe in, but let me just put it out there.
Okay.
Right now,
if you don't believe in it, then
I'm trying to represent the chat. I'm a person of the people. I'm trying to represent the chat a little bit here. Right now, House of X and Powers of X is on the Evergreen List already. Marvel's already said that's going to be there. If you're going to pick a second X-Men book to go on the list, is this like too intellectual? Is it not enough bashing things? Like, would it be better to have the Brood Saga? Would it be better to have like Mutant Massacre? Like, is this just another very, very intellectual X-Men book to put next to House of X, Power of X? And people are going to be like, oh, so X-Men comics are boring, huh? Now, I don't necessarily believe this, but I do think they are 2 of the most intellectual X-Men comics ever written. So
I'm not sure I would have put House of X on the list just because, as great as it is, it's not what newcomers would expect from the X-Men, and it requires quite a lot of explanation or patience. It's great, but I would have put it there, but I assume they want to fuel sales of their current range. So
I would agree to that. I'm surprised.
Is this your way to sneak in X-Men 2.0 into the list? again there, Peter? I feel like it's a poor attempt at trying to sneak in your other book.
Oh my gosh. Why did you bring that up? Everybody had forgotten it.
Yeah, not Peter. I think this is easier to get into than something like House and Powers of X. House and Powers
I
of X
agree
is
with that.
so
I think so
complicated.
too.
I love it.
Yeah, I would.
And it exists in any time. Like you could read it in 85, 95, 2005, 2023. Like it truly works no matter what. Some of the language might be dated, but the sentiment of what's happening and what the X-Men are fighting against is permanent.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah, like
100%. Yeah. This is
I completely.
like it shows you
Yeah.
sorry, it
Yeah,
shows you the
and-
complexity of the villain of Magneto whenever
Yeah.
he's like at the beginning with those two dead kids. I mean, it's a rough read when you're considering the subject, right? Like we're talking about dead children and these people hunting down these people because they're different and it's awful, but it also shows you everything you need to know about the X-Men. It's great. Oh
And the other
my
thing-
God, I
and-
will fight for this book.
And it is wonderfully standalone. Again, House of X is a slightly odd pick in that, it's opening the door to this grand tapestry of stories that are to follow. I mean, okay, but that may or may not be satisfying for newbies.
Yeah, I would honestly say like I would put this in before House and Powers. I think House and Powers is an odd choice. I know why they did it because it's the new hotness.
Yeah.
But there's
So-
tons of
but
X-Men
it's-
stories that I think I would prefer to see on that list.
It's not going to be hotness much longer, which is odd.
Yeah,
Full
well, and
10
also
points for
it's
using full hotness in this. Good for you.
Well, I also feel like this is also this would be the third X-Men book on this list because Dark Phoenix is also on there, and as much as I love it, it is also kind of a dry writing style because of its age. Silver Age is a little more wordy, so this would also, something to consider, be the third X-Men book on this list. Fourth,
Well,
we
here,
put
let's-
Wolverine.
Let's
I
let's
agree.
look at the list really quick. Because the list, I've got 9 books in there, including Everybody's Choice. Let me just
I think you raised a good point. I'll just quickly throw in that, it's all signs are that they're about to make a big push with the X-Men in the movies. They're recalibrating the comics line. They're going to give a lot of push and support to the comics line. Because it is a major franchise, I don't think 3 X-Men picks is completely beyond the pale.
why isn't this full? Excuse me.
Keep
Hold on a
teasing them
second.
with that Silver Surfer.
I
don't
know.
what the hell
I
that
can't
means.
wait.
Think
get
about
there.
maybe we're gonna talk about Silver Surfer. I don't know.
I don't know. At this rate, I can't even get the stupid thing to reload. Oh, that's why. All right. So this is what the
Should you
list
go
looks
check on Melanie just by any
It's fine.
chance?
She's reading One Piece. She texted me. She said sorry. I
Has she
just
recovered
love
from One Piece?
I just want to make sure she's okay.
Nobody
Just
recovers
follow
from
Bob and
nobody recovers from One Piece. You cry all the way through. That's what unites all these people together. And I told you, Odfel, you need to cosplay as Nami.
Everyone
you
keeps
wouldn't
telling
have
me
to-
that, and my hair's
you
like
wouldn't
the
have
right
to do
length,
much.
but I've never read or watched One Piece. I gotta get on it.
You got to get on it. All right, this is our list so far. Jesus Christ, how did
Oh,
those two
nicely
books
done.
get on there?
There are some
Wolverine,
killers.
Thor, X-Men Gifted, Gwenpool, Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, Runaways, Ultimate Spider-Man, Captain America by Brubaker, and X-Men God Loves Man Kills. I think so. We need to choose one more.
Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Okay, good. I'm glad we all agree.
Easy there, champ. Oh my
Mutant
God.
Genesis, the top-selling comic book of all time.
I would go with Daredevil. That's my choice, is adding it on the list. Just because I know
What was our
how.
list again?
So the list so far are these books right here.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, let me get a real quick super chat. Newcomers will be bombarded with the new X-Men to get involved when that new films come out. If God Loves Man Kills Evergreen, then we'll pick it up later. There we go. And he's sending you a rose, Odfel. Thank you for that, brother. So, yeah, we do have 3 X-Men related titles already. 4 if you include Gwenpool as a mutant.
I do love Demon Bear, but I would also probably say Daredevil, just because we don't have a lot of street level in the current Evergreens and in our current list. And I think it would diversify the level of superheroes, and I'm not sure they would do quite that many mutant books, personally.
Right.
Damn it, you make too much sense. I think
So
I can't argue against that, unfortunately.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm a big
You're
fan
too
of the
good.
Daredevil book.
Curtis, what do you think, buddy?
About Daredevil specifically,
No, what do you think should be added to the top 10? Superior
I
Spider-Man?
probably, even though I had some issues with the art, I'd probably add Captain America. I mean, not Captain America, Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel from
Thank
from
you.
both those picks.
Oh God. Wait a minute now. Captain Marvel over Daredevil by Frank Miller as an evergreen, right? Not because you
I
like
think-
it better. Go ahead.
No, I think that cherry picking issues and trying to come up with a run for Frank Miller is going to be a little haphazard. But looking at the list as a whole as it is, Captain Marvel fills a gap where Daredevil does not.
Huh. Okay, there is an evergreen of Daredevil already. And is it Born Again?
Oh, there was.
Crisis?
I forgot about Born Again.
Which I think to a lot of people is the best Daredevil story.
Don't get me wrong, I still like Daredevil by Frank Miller.
We could have Spike gifted, but
But I'm just trying to look at the big picture here.
No, absolutely. I totally forgot he was already on the evergreen list when I said that. So you have a good point.
We added 2 of Peter's.
Could go for 3.
Odfel has 1 added to the list.
I just wish that first arc of Captain Marvel was better. Like, I want there to be a Captain Marvel book on the list. I just don't.
Well,
love
they
that
do
arc.
have a Miss Marvel book on the list, so we
Yeah,
are
but
getting a
those-
little bit of Marvel.
Miss Marvel is there.
That is true.
We've got 1 from Jess, which is Gwenpool. We got 2 from Curtis. Oh, they're in mine. So what needs to be added? I think we vote. Let's go round table. Odfel, now that you've seen all the picks, what needs to be added? And you can pick your own. That's fine.
I'm trying to think because now that there is another Daredevil, I'm like, do we need both? I don't know. I think I am going to stick to Captain Marvel. I think since it has the movie recognition, I think it would do probably the best to get new readers invested into the character.
Okay, that's 1 vote for Captain Marvel. Lars, what are you voting for, buddy?
Well, I don't wish to be hideously biased. I guess I would continue to stick by Daredevil only because
Okay.
there is a new TV show coming up. We do have Miss Marvel on the list, which I think is terrific. So there's representation there. I think this is such an entry point to the entire Daredevil franchise that I would stick with this one.
Okay. Peter.
My
Give me
vote
that
is Superior Spider-Man.
God bless. You didn't vote for the previous 2. Oh gosh. Okay. All right.
Trying to make sure we don't get deadlocked here. Trying to put some options into the mix. And I truly believe Superior Spider-Man is. I think everybody will like it.
Okay. Omni Dog.
I actually have changed my mind a little bit. And I think that I agree with the Captain Marvel argument. I think as much as I enjoyed Kelly Thompson's run more, this is the pick that we have, and I feel like that's kind of the iconic Captain Marvel that that became ingrained in the populace. With the movie and with the stories, it changed Captain Marvel, as you know, it introduced Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel, blah, 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 Captain Marvel.
Okay. Curtis, your choice, buddy. What are you picking?
Captain Marvel.
God bless America. Really? Well, I guess I don't. My vote doesn't matter.
He could have picked his own pick and tied it up, but no, he's going with the Captain Marvel voting block.
We got to move on. We got to keep on going to the next thing here.
All right, fine.
We still got so much more to talk about.
My vote was for freaking Daredevil, and I'm adding Captain freaking Marvel. Give me a second to give you the final freaking list. I'm not angry. That's what I'm saying. I think these people are great. Captain Marvel by Sterling Sue DeConnick.
Well,
I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm looking at our top 10 and I'm like, I feel like I just stepped into a bizarro universe.
well, look, I think there's a huge array of great picks here. I mean, it's a bit hard to go wrong with so much of what we selected.
All right, here we go.
You pick something. And ultimately you pick something.
So here's our evergreen list. If we work for Marvel Comics, Wolverine, Thor, Astonishing X-Men. These are volume 1s. Gwenpool, Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, Runaways, Ultimate Spider-Man, Captain America, God Loves Man Kills, and Captain Marvel by Kelly Sue DeConnick. That is our list. Now we did
not a bad list at all.
Honestly,
solid.
I mean, I feel like this is what they have to go through at Marvel, right? When deciding an evergreen list, you have people that are like, absolutely not. Just because it's like, it's awful to them, but people bring up a good argument and then you get outvoted, as the case with Kelly Sue DeConnick with 3 votes.
Listen, I would put Kelly Thompson. I just was worried it wasn't approachable enough.
Yeah, and that's why I agreed with this pick of Captain Marvel. It was more approachable, even though I liked Kelly Thompson's more. I think that this one's easier to get into.
Man, and Rodimus Prime Rib. This is another one. Like Fantastic Four was in my top 5.
Yeah,
I took it out. Because I thought maybe one of them would have it, and that's the beauty of not like doing this without knowing what anybody else had. It's like it's a secret, right? Until we get together and talk about it. So I love this idea, Peter. This was wonderful.
Maybe your show could focus all on Fantastic Four picks.
Kind of like what we're doing today.
Yeah, we just couldn't pick everything, and that's why we didn't get to Fantastic Four.
Or Punisher.
Looking at some of the comments in the chat, yeah, I mean, this is a good mix of like truly accessible, but also sometimes challenging. And I think it just, again, in terms of theme, in terms of layers, in terms of detail, I think that's okay in a way, because sometimes I think it's okay to represent, this is what comics are. This is what it is. You can like it or not, but this is what it is. And I think that's okay.
Wait, was there any FF in the announced evergreens that are for jerseys as well?
I don't think so.
Oh. Because I didn't think, I was like, wait a minute.
These are the bad books I like in Ultimate Spider-Man. Peter, we're here.
Chaos.
All right, let's do the last.
The Elmo meme.
Yes, the fire
train.
All right, here we go.
Peter, all about Ultimate Spider-Man.
All right, so let me introduce this, okay?
Okay.
The idea is, if you enjoyed this chaos, what we'd like to do, perhaps in the future, if you enjoy this level of chaos, is come back and have you or possibly us pick specific characters or books or titles or teams where we have to duke it out over what one book of theirs must be evergreen. So we picked Silver Surfer just to see how that would go. And I think Omar's about to lead us through a lightning round of why we insist our one pick should be the only Silver Surfer evergreen book. Omar.
That's right. These are pre-existing books that have been printed in the past, and I love the fact that there are 2 on here that got voted twice. So leading the charge is Odfel with Donny Cates' Silver Surfer Black. Tell me why you would why this book needs to be evergreen.
So first of all, I do like that they print these on the oversized kind of like grand design. I think it makes it unique. I think it makes it feel more like a collector's piece that I could see people wanting to go for because of the paper it's printed on. I think they also do sell it on trade paperback as well. But the thing about Silver Surfer Black is it's new. As someone who got into comics in 2015, there hasn't really been a Silver Surfer book out that's new since I started reading comics. This was the first one. I picked it up. I loved it. I think it's really approachable, really understandable without having to know a lot about Silver Surfer Black. And I think that Donny Cates really captures a good amount of the character classically and makes it approachable in a balance where I could see someone reading this and then wanting to go back and reading classic Silver Surfer afterwards.
Okay. Those are some good points. Lars and Peter agreeing.
Yes, well,
Peter,
I feel like we're so in sync. We have the big love going. Why don't you?
Oh my God, you two! What makes this book evergreen? Why pitch this book from the Silver Surfer run when Jim Starlin came back to the book, right? This is what we're talking about.
Yes.
I think, and Lim on art, if I'm not mistaken. Yes?
I'm sorry,
Ron
what?
Lim is on
Yeah,
artwork.
Ron Lim,
Right.
Yeah. I don't know that there's a more iconic or better looking Silver Surfer than Lim drawing him. And I think if you're trying to put a Silver Surfer book out there for an audience that just wants to pick up one and understand who he is and what his place is in the universe, it's not enough to just have him by himself. You have to see him bumping up against something, bumping up against Galactus, bumping up against somebody, possibly Thanos. There aren't any Thanos-oriented books in the Evergreen List other than Infinity Gauntlet. And this actually gives context to Infinity Gauntlet, but it's a fun read on its own. So you've got iconic Silver Surfer writing and art. You've got Thanos in it, which is a huge sell for modern audiences. And honestly, I just think it's a book that shows Silver Surfer in opposition to someone else, which I think is really critical to get the most out of Silver Surfer.
Yeah, pretty much everything Peter said. Infinity Gauntlet is already on the list. This is a great lead up to that. And I don't think the Surfer becomes a B-level character in his own book. I think he's very much a participant, an important character here. And, you know, it's a cracking run. A cracking run.
Cracking run. Okay.
Cracking.
Curtis and Jess, you guys went with Silver Surfer by Dan Slott, Mike and Laura Allred. Why so?
I'm going to defer to Curtis on this, as Lars just did to Peter, and then I will add my thoughts.
Okay.
Perhaps.
Okay, so when Peter suggested Silver Surfer, I'm like, man, I've barely read any Silver Surfer. But then I went and
There's like 10 epics, Curtis.
I know. Well, then I started realizing how much I've actually read a lot of Silver Surfer, and all of these picks sprung to my mind right away as ones that I would pick as my top pick. I had a really hard time choosing this because I love Silver Surfer Black and I love Parable. And Jim Starlin's whole run, even Thanos Quest leading up to Infinity Gauntlet, is just fantastic. But the reason why I put the Allred and Slott Silver Surfer over this is because I find that Silver Surfer, he gets too introspective too much, I think. And that was, I remember when the 90s cartoon came out, I wanted to love it so much, but it is so heavy with just his own self-realization or introspective nature that I'm like, this is really, really boring. And so I wanted to pick a title that is a little bit more fun. So I went with Silver Surfer, this Silver Surfer run, because it just gets a little wacky and I like it a lot.
Yeah, I agree 100% with what Curtis said. I have always found Silver Surfer to be somewhat somewhat bland to me, and the introduction of now I'm flipping out on her name with the dotted dress. The introduction of his companion, where they travel all over the place. And I think maybe it's Aaron. I'm not doing right.
Was it Annie? No, I can't remember. Yeah, what is it?
It's the I thought of writing it down because I knew I was going to forget it. So
somebody in the chat knows. Hamza, where are you at?
I'm Googling it. We'll see.
Dawn. Greenwood.
That's it. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you.
Greenwood.
Thank you. There we go. It adds extra character to Silver Surfer and gives me a reason to really care about him, because he finds himself not only does she take him, he takes her to new places that she's never seen, but she also takes him emotionally to places he hasn't seen in a long time. And the ending, first of all, I'm absolutely in the bag all the time for Mike and Laura Allred's art. I will pick it up anytime and look at it and read it and love it. And I'm sure he and Dan Slott worked hand in hand to make this what it was. And it not only is it gripping, compelling, and silly fun, but it genuinely made me cry at the very end. It was such a touching end that really brought kind of a real life mood into the book. I don't want to spoil the ending for people that haven't read it, but I think it was my top book of the year when it came out in 2016, 2017, whenever it came out. That ending absolutely broke me. And it was, I think, a wonderful piece of writing and creation by the whole team to set up that ending in such a touching and beautiful way.
Yeah, and this has been pointed out, inspired by Dan Slott admits inspired by Doctor Who. It's basically Doctor Who, but Silver Surfer.
God damn it! I knew you were going to say that.
Well, but Dan Slott said it. I'm just repeating it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any
Dan
Doctor
Slott
Who, so
just
it doesn't
wrote it.
matter to me.
Dan Slott just wrote an awesome Doctor Who comic too. Absolutely awesome.
Okay, that's cool.
I went with Parable. It's my favorite Silver Surfer story. It's probably the most quotable Silver Surfer story. It's got Stan Lee. It's this beautiful mixture of two different worlds like blending together. So you have Stan Lee and Mobius working together on this book. It's a standalone story. I know they were originally, I think there were two of them that were released, but when released in trade paperback, it's only been one graphic novel. And you get a lot of Stan Lee dialogue, and it's cheesy and it's on the nose, but it really showcases not just how great the character of Silver Surfer is, but how much Stan Lee loved Silver Surfer, which is why like he wouldn't let just anybody write Silver Surfer, like why Roy Thomas was not allowed to use Silver Surfer in the run on the Defenders. He was like, no, me and Big John got some plans for Silver Surfer. I absolutely love the quotes in here about not giving it a try. Like it's like there's no shame in like trying. It's the cowardice of not having tried. That's the shameful thing. Oh, I absolutely love this run. I think it's perfect, and it's a great introduction to the character. This is hard because I feel like I'm not going to pick mine in the end.
I may have been swayed to not pick mine.
Yeah. But the Dan Slott run had been on my mind anyway.
So I'm glad somebody brought it up.
Yeah, it had, and it's every bit as good as Curtis and Jess say. So I'm happy to go with that one.
Odfel.
So I don't want to vote for myself because I've only ever read one of these four. But based on argument alone, and what based on those pitches I would probably read, I would have to also go with the Dan Slott one, because even though like I love Silver Surfer Black, it's really hard for me to compare it to the other ones because I have not read them. So I would probably vote for the Dan Slott run that Curtis and Jess pitched as well.
Peter? Lars?
Again,
Lars, how in the hell did you not vote for the most Doctor Who comic ever?
Well, there is that. No, I agree. I read the Dan Slott run a little late in the game when it was all. I just got it from the library, and I couldn't put it down. I absolutely could not put it down. So I'm more than happy to go with that one.
Okay.
All right.
Nice.
Peter?
I actually think Odfel made the most compelling argument, but having read all four of these books and thinking about what anybody would buy off the Evergreen List and then say, I want the next Silver Surfer's book, I think it's probably Slott and Alred's.
Yeah. I think it's a beautiful story, and Jess is right. It does bring a tear to my eye, and how it all comes together, and why his board is called To Be. I thought it was the most adorable thing in comics.
That's right.
Oh, the board is such a good character in the run.
I forgot about that. Yeah, the board is an amazing character.
And those goddamn colors that come to play later on that you unless you don't have a heart, like I don't see anybody not crying at the end of that book. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't even make a stand for my book. I really like it. I would love for it to be evergreen, but I think the one that would speak more to a wider audience and bring more people in would be Silver Surfer by Dan Slott and Mike Allred. Yeah.
Again, I think these are all worthy picks. I don't think any of these picks you would look at and go, "What on earth are you doing?" But you got to pick one. So
it is really interesting looking back at our top 10 evergreens and looking at our Silver Surfer. There's not one single Silver Age book. Before we leave tonight, I'm wondering, did any of you think of a Silver Age book?
No. I always incur wrath and hatred when I say that. No.
I came very close to picking basically the contents of the first Surfer epic as my Silver Surfer. But then I was like, we kind of said that epics are semi out of bounds because they're a little bit evergreen already. But I did really strongly consider this to be my Surfer pick.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Jess, Silver Age didn't cross your mind at all?
No.
Okay.
Oh, I'm looking at Black Cat by Jed McKay. I should have picked that. Damn it.
No,
Okay.
no. You went with She-Hulk.
I know. No, I for Evergreen, I just picked the books that I was really excited about to read and reread and to keep rereading.
Mhm.
I picked honestly comfort books. When I look at them.
Yeah.
It's good. It was a good list. What about you, Curtis? You're an epic guy. Do you think like, oh, I think this would be good? Did the thought ever occur to you, like any of the Silver Age stuff?
My thinking was that Lee and Kirby stuff is already always in print by Marvel, always.
Mhm.
So I don't need to add my vote to that. It's already taken care of.
Wow.
That was kind of my thinking with the Silver Surfer pick as well, because I was tempted to go with the original Stanley run, but I was like, oh, surely someone else is going to pick that, but nobody did.
No, nobody did.
That was
You're right.
honestly, that was kind of my consideration as well, because I thought about early X-Men, because I'm like, giant size is iconic, and the stuff before giant size is iconic, but people who want to read that are probably going to buy the omnibus, and thus wouldn't be interested in it being an evergreen.
Just the Silver Age just isn't as accessible to a modern audience as we want it to be.
No.
And if you look at all of DC's evergreen books, because they have a lot of books that are evergreen, but none of them are Silver Age or beyond.
You are absolutely right. Yeah.
Well, you just have to make too many allowances. You just do.
Mhm.
I'm very sorry, but you do. So
yeah,
I thought about like some Ditko and actually in my top, when I had it as top 10 before Peter threw a wrench in there, I did have the Ditko and Lee stuff in there, and I had the Fantastic Four, the Coming of Galactus, but that was it. I think as far as Silver Age, maybe Bronze Age with the giant size stuff, giant size X-Men. But then when we were like only 3, I was like, holy crap! Well, that changes everything. And accessibility, I think it is very important when it comes to these books. If it's, because we are living in an age when I'm sure nobody needs to remind anybody that manga is outselling Western comics, right? And is a manga reader going to trickle into the Silver Age Steve Ditko and Stan Lee run of Spider-Man? Probably not. But I'm sure
manga readers don't even really dip into anything older than the 1980s of manga. It's like that.
That breaks my heart because all of the Tezuka stuff is great. But I think but
that stuff doesn't sell. I love Tezuka as well. I think he's fantastic, and I buy all of his. I'm excited for the one that's coming out in a couple of weeks. But there is just I don't know what it is, a mindset or something like that, where it's like, no, it's just too old. I can't get into it, and it's just that's the way it is. So I think that all of us had that thinking in mind as well, like what is accessible? What does accessible mean? And the way that comics were written in the 60s isn't what we were thinking.
Kirby's a classic, and Marvel wouldn't be what it is without him. Oh yeah,
Absolutely
there's no denying
true.
that.
100%.
I mean, that is true.
But that's like
very
saying,
true. However,
Orson Welles is great, and without Citizen Kane, we wouldn't have the cinematography that we do today, or Stagecoach, the panning, right? Show a 12-year-old Stagecoach, you're gonna fall asleep within the first 2 minutes usually. Like it's different times we live in.
Well, I also want to make the point, this is not just a list for 12-year-olds. And I know the chat has been really intriguing and going back and forth about should they all be accessible by 12-year-olds. But I look at the DC, at the DC Evergreen list. I look at the DC Evergreen list, and I think the thing that all the books have in common, whether that's Watchmen or Hush or anything that kind of DC goes back to print on in multiple formats, multiple times, all the time, is they're all very satisfying to read on their own, even if they lead to other things. Like Batman Year One is a complete story, but it's also part of understanding who Batman is. it leads you to other Batman books, but it's also a really great story on its own. Whereas Watchmen is just its own individual story. And I just think many of us, in looking what we picked, either tried to pick something that was complete all on its own, which I think some of these runs are. God Loves, Man Kills, complete all on its own. Astonishing X-Men's first arc exists fine on its own. It could be a one-shot. You would never know that there was anything else. And some of us really deliberately pick things that are first chapters that are just really accessible and fun. And I think the problem with choosing Silver Age books is it's like, well, unless you're going to start from the issue 1, it's hard to start from the beginning. And I would argue Spider-Man is one of the only ones that you would really want to start from issue 1 on an evergreen list. And then otherwise, it's hard to get anything complete because it's so episodic. So I love a lot of Silver Age books. I mean, look at what's behind. I have all Masterworks and Epics behind me. But for Evergreen, I think it's hard when you look at what DC does and what sells repeatedly in the bookstore market and what gets checked out repeatedly from the library and creates comic book fans. I think it's a lot of stuff like this.
Yeah, the DC Evergreen list includes some stuff that I know that like friends of mine who are seriously not into comics, those are the comics they wound up reading and just gravitate right onto when and maybe they didn't go any further than that. As you say, you don't have to read further than Batman Year One, but at least you read Batman Year One. You know, a friend of mine read Watchmen once a year. He doesn't really touch other comics, and so I think the problem with a lot of the Silver Age wouldn't incite that sort of devotion and excitement.
Or we could all be wrong. You guys are the ones that are out in the story. If the whole chat is saying Silver Age, maybe we need to do one of these to say, what are our top Silver Age Evergreen runs? And we have our carte blanche to make it any combination of issues we want to. You know?
That might be fun. Did anyone think of Strange Academy with the Doctor Strange movie tie-ins? I on it. Thank you for the super chat, Louise. Yeah. I honestly didn't, and that's a good one. That's a really good book.
Yeah,
I considered it. But I was worried that since none of the characters were really established name characters, like Strange is kind of in it, but it focuses on the kids. I was kind of worried that it might not be a strong pick just because Strange isn't very much an active role in that at times. It really focuses on the dynamic between students, and the students are all kind of obscure legacy characters. So I considered it as I was narrowing things down, but I don't think it made my top 10.
Yeah, along those lines. I was looking at this as trying to open doors. And like it's fine that we don't have Daredevil by Miller. I don't have a problem with that. But that's why I picked that one. Because like this opens a world that you might go, oh, I would like to read more Daredevil. And so I think a lot of these picks are like, oh, I'd like to read more Wolverine. I'd like to read more Thor, you know. So that was one of the criteria.
I'm so tired of Stan Lee giving all his credit, and all he did was give the artist a short synopsis or an idea. And then the artist came up with a story and he filled in the word balloons. I think that was a lot to do with the way of the Marvel way, right? That's what it's called, where he was writing like 6, 7, 8 different books. And he was like, here you go. Let me know when you're done. He'd give them the plot synopsis. And then when they were done drawing, he would fill in the word balloons. I think to this day, some people still use that.
Really?
But you know, the thing about Stan, and I'm not going to go into this deep conversation about pro Stan Lee or anti Stan Lee, because I know how people are passionate about their feelings on him, is that at least he gave credit to people. He didn't take all the glory for himself. Could have been like X-Men by Stan Lee, or Avengers by Stan Lee, or Spider-Man by Stan Lee. And he was always the face of Marvel because Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby didn't want that in their lives. Like, you know.
I also think it's an oversimplification to say that he just wrote a short synopsis, and because that's how many Marvel artists work. And if you're saying that about Stan, you got to say that about everybody too, and everybody else. And that's not as easy. That kind of collaboration isn't as easy as you think it is.
Well, also even that, you are sort of coming up with the story. I love how they go, and that's all he did. So all he did was sort of come up with the story and then write the dialogue as if that's nothing. I understand there's a debate to be had here, but like, it's not that he did nothing.
This is a really good question. How many of these evergreen lists were best-selling monthly titles? Well, you had Wolverine being a mini-series, but it did sell well enough to spin off another one, right? Astonishing sold hell of a lot. Gwenpool sold enough to last 50 freaking issues, and Squirrel
26. But who's counting? It was Squirrel Girl 50. Yeah.
Squirrel Girl sold over. Runaways was huge. Unfortunately, the creator took a lot of breaks and then eventually got replaced by Joss Whedon and then Terry Moore, oh my goodness, Catherine Eminem. Ultimate Spider-Man. Oh my gosh, it was banging, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Captain America, I want to say that was a big seller when it was out. It was a was a huge seller. It was a huge seller. God Loves Man Kills is the only one I don't know about. I don't know if it sold
well at the time
when it came out.
At the time, everything X-Men sold, so I would presume it sold pretty well.
Even
And it
during
was,
that,
the whole point was it was a special presentation of X-Men as a Marvel graphic novel.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say because that one wasn't sold in supermarkets at a
No.
time when a lot of comics were sold like off the newsstand.
Right. It was direct market.
But X-Men was peaking at that point. So,
But yes, it
or
was
cresting,
okay.
I should say, cresting.
I will, and I don't know about Captain Marvel. Honestly, I assume well enough to last. Go ahead.
Captain Marvel. I was gonna say, like, I worked at a comic shop in 2012, and it was a weird year for books because it's hard to say if it sold well because it was also in an era where they were trying so many new things that I feel like a lot of the female-led titles got a lot of flack for no reason. So I genuinely don't know if it sold poorly.
Yeah, I don't think it did. I mean, I can't imagine a publisher just printing books and not selling, right? It sold well enough that she had 2 series.
Well,
Yeah.
and also Captain Marvel benefited from the bounce of Marvel Now. It was one of only 3 books that launched before in Marvel Now that then retroactively got grandfathered into Marvel Now. So Captain Marvel had the benefit of launching and all like number 1s and number 2s do decently, and then getting a second bounce off of hitting Marvel Now and getting the Marvel Now branding on the cover at the beginning of 2013. But I also want to point out that it's not always about what books sell monthly. Squirrel Girl got 50 issues not because it was a strong monthly seller, but because it was getting devoured by the Scholastic book fairs and libraries and bookstores.
Collected editions
like
go a long
monthly
way with some of these.
monthly comic sales are just for people who know what the direct market is, which is such a tiny fraction of the fans of these characters and the potential fans of these characters.
And thank you for this reminder. Runaways was also canceled. If
Yeah.
it wasn't for the digest size trades that they were marketing towards manga readers, because you all remember that, the big push, because oh my god, that's right, this was their wave of Tsunami. Remember, they were doing that. They were doing the Human Torch. They were doing
It's the only one
Steam,
anybody chooses to remember, but yes.
That's right.
Runaways. I will always
Venom.
remember that. And Venom was part of the Tsunami wave with Daniel A. writing the story, whatever. But I feel like it came back because of trade paperback sales. I mean,
Yeah, we're all
and
talking
people
about it like
find
it's a modern classic, but it exists because of bookshop sales.
yeah.
And people can find things after the fact. Like that's the whole cult classic phrase is because it's like, no, it didn't do well, but it's actually super good, and people discovered it after the fact.
New X-Men by Morrison and Avengers by Bendis. New Avengers by Bendis seems like a given. Skip, this is simple. Iron Giant, The Sentinel. I actually have a custom omnibus of that run. That was Sean McKeever wrote that. And it was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. Now, before we leave, let's do this again because this was a lot of fun, and it was so much fun that I stopped drinking to focus on what you all were saying. and
We can go for round 2.
When has that ever happened?
I never, hardly ever. And I had a lot of fun discussing these books, and we kept it civil enough.
Yeah.
And we didn't have to argue every time. For the love of God, there are 3 titles on this top 10 that I would never, ever put on mine. But I love that they made it in there because I think the debates were strong for them. And yeah, in the end, it's our list, and I love it. I think it's great. Putting the stamp.
Hey Omar,
on that. Yes, sir.
did you get Riley's picks?
No,
Did
he
he
never.
send you
He
anything?
was feeling sick, so he never did reach
Okay.
out to me. I would have loved to have known what he picked because I
Yeah.
know he's also an X-Men guy and he loves collected editions. I think we should do this again for DC. Let's do DC
Oh,
next.
that'd
before
I would
we
love
go.
that.
Whoa.
Now
That'd
they're
be fun.
long. They're
No.
already longer.
I say we do DC without Vertigo.
Okay.
And
let's
Vertigo
let's
can be a
fo- let's-
separate one.
Yeah, Vertigo can be its own thing. I think limiting ourselves to superheroes is kind of fun, like especially if we have Peter's rules of only 3 books.
Right.
I'm gonna have to deep
Only
dive their
3 books.
evergreen list. I feel like it's gonna be hard not to pick ones they've already picked.
I think Batman Year One, Dark Knight are always one. I don't know what else has been evergreen honestly.
I would
All-Star
assume
Superman-
Kingdom Come
Definitely.
All-Star
and
Superman.
Identity Crisis.
I mean, obviously, it's going to be Batman Year 2. That definitely.
my
gonna be-
God,
Batman
I
Year
knew that
1
was
is
gonna come up.
evergreen. How is Batman Year 2 not evergreen?
Because nobody likes that book but you. It's awful.
That's impossible. I
even
That's-
had you on my show for you to try and defend it. That was a mistake.
Yeah, you lied to me. You were like, "Hey, we're going to talk about Batman." I come in there, I get bashed for liking Batman Year 2.
As it
I
should
was
be.
not expecting
It's okay.
that.
We can go to bat for Amanda Connor, Harley Quinn. It's okay.
Oh,
Holy smoke,
Oh,
yes.
God.
Now you're talking.
Uh,
Now you're talking. We are
I think that will be
vibing.
another fun episode. So thank you all so much for joining me today. And thank you to everybody that watched. Please don't forget to hit that like button. And if you're watching this later, write in the comments what other evergreen lists you would like to see. I like the idea of having a separate Silver Age and a separate Vertigo. That's a lot of fun. And then we can do Curtis's ridiculous epics. But an omnibus list, oh my God. I can't wait to talk about those. That would be fun. So why don't we go around table to introduce yourselves and say our goodbyes.
Oh, I'm Odfel. I'm a cosplayer. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, all of those. I make a lot of cosplay content on YouTube. I do toy and statue unboxings and occasional comic related content. But definitely check it out. It's a fun time. I cosplay a lot of retro comics, so that's always fun.
And Lars, what about you, sir? Where are you these days?
Yep, I'm available at madnorwegian.com. And of course, one of our specialties is Doctor Who. And I co-write a history, the Doctor Who timeline with Lance Parkin. We had a couple new volumes of our About Time series out, which explores the social and political context in which Doctor Who was made in just unbelievable detail. And, you know, boy, of all things, along the way, it's true. I did write a book on G.I. Joe, and I have been flummoxed with how much after the fact people seem to appreciate that one, because at the time we kind of couldn't give it away, and now people say that suddenly people say they really like it, so that's very flattering, and thank you.
Thank you for that, James.
Thank you.
Sharing
There you
the
go.
Mad Norwegian's website. And what about you, Peter? Where are you hanging out these days? Causing
Well, I'm Crisis with a K everywhere you can find me on the internet. My home on the internet is crushingcrisis.com, and I don't venture out of there too often these days unless I am invited by the Uncanny Omar. I'm just so happy we finally got to do this. We always tease each other that we needed a show where we really could just have the whole show be about arguing, and I think we fulfilled the brief. So I hope we get to come back and do some more of this. These are 5 of my favorite comic book fans on the internet.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Peter. I think we were all too nice. We didn't really fulfill the arguing mandate, but we
yeah,
did.
you
have
two
a-
guys needed
we
to
did-
get a
we did
room.
have a-
Both of you, I love you, Peter. Your list is amazing.
Yeah.
Peter's like, I like you and Lars. What the hell was happening there?
True.
Well, like I said, Bizarro Peter, so I tried to agree with Lars a lot.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
is that what happened?
I think love is in the air. So
Yeah.
Curtis, what about you, my friend? Where are you, and what are we waiting on?
Oh man, yeah, I am the Epic Collection guy. I have Epic Collection Facebook groups and Twitters and all that kind of stuff. Or sorry, X, Epic Collection X, and we are looking forward to the new Epic Collection announcements, the stuff that's coming out in fall of 2024. And Marvel, I guess they're working hard and trying to make that list. They're probably in long arguments like we are. And that's why it's taking so long for them to get it to us.
they have to wrestle in the Jello pit to solve their arguments. So yeah,
I think so.
Is that what you think happens there, Lars?
I'm certain it does.
Okay.
Certain that's what
David
goes on.
Gabriel's always the winner.
Indeed. Yes.
So yeah,
Um,
Omar, let me know when that list is coming.
I sent
David Gabriel, renowned Jello wrestling champion. Yeah.
I sent a reminder this Tuesday. I have not heard back, so that usually means they're super busy. Leave me alone. What about you, Omni Dog?
I'm the adorable Omni Dog on Omni Dog's Vault on YouTube, Omni Dogs _ Vault on Instagram. And I also have a Discord that Cycle Cleveland and James created for me. And Curtis is hard at work in there trying to get the Epic channel going. I support him completely in that endeavor. So go, and there's James with the Omni Dog's Vault Discord, which is actually a lot of fun. And thank you for having me on. This was a blast.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're feeling better.
This was
buddy.
really
Thank
fun.
you. Yeah,
And
this
I
was
am
great.
the Uncanny Omar. I will be back tomorrow with some shit. Oh, DC. Yeah, DC solicitations. Ooh, a brand new omnibus, by the way, for those that are staying really late, about a dude that runs really, really fast. That's all I will say.
Ooh.
Is it the turtle from Captain Carrot?
No, no,
The
it's
Quicksilver?
No, I said DC. But that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for watching us. Hit that like button on the way out. We will be back with the Evergreen, I think, DC list, and then more Marvel goodness, and then we'll see what else everybody else wants to see.
Sure.
But that's it, everybody. Much love. Thank you for watching.
Peace
Have a
and love.
great evening or morning, wherever.